What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty, and welcome to another amazing video. You can follow me on Patreon for exclusive stories. 12 of Chapter 171 Heading to Daughter Island. Advertise here. However, the real situation is exactly what Bai Ye thought. The reason why the five elders agreed to Sengoku's proposal was to make Bai Ye officially become the fourth general of Marine. The purpose is to dispel Marine and Bai Ye's suspicions so that their plan can be implemented better. When Bai Ye became Marine General, he was proud of himself and relaxed his vigilance. Then the two Emperor-level pirate groups jointly launched an attack on Bai Ye. Bai Ye will definitely die by then. Coupled with the goodwill shown by the world government to Marine in this matter, Marine will hardly doubt that this matter is caused by the world government. And as long as the leader Byakuya dies, even if Marine finds out about it afterwards, according to Sengoku's character, he will just endure it and not take any drastic action. In this case, Marine will return to his previous state of letting things go and become a dog in the hands of the world government again. This is what world government most wants to see. Of course, the basis of all this is that Bai Ye can be successfully eliminated. But what the five elders didn't expect was that Bai Ye, who had never met them, knew their personalities very well. From their abnormal behavior, it was easy to guess their plan. After Bai Ye hung up the phone, a chill flashed in his eyes, and he snorted coldly, "Since you all want to plot against me, I might as well find something for you to do." After letting Sabo go last time, Dorag seemed to be very interested in the alliance with Ye organization, so he wanted to ask Bai Ye to find a place to discuss the specific matters of cooperation. Just because Bai Ye had been preparing for the competition with Mihawk during this period, he did not reply to Dorag. Now it seems that it may be time. Although Bai Ye's appointment as Marine's fourth general has not yet been announced, the news spread like wildfire across the sea and attracted the attention of countless people. Although everyone on the sea was a little surprised that Bai Ye could become the fourth general, they felt that it was reasonable. After all, Bai Ye had been rumored to be the fourth general before. Now it's just recognized by the world government. From the name in everyone's mouth, it became a formal title. But many people also question whether Bai Ye is really qualified to become the fourth Marine general. After Bai Ye came out of the Marine elite training camp, he made a lot of achievements. He killed and captured many big pirates. And some time ago, he defeated Mihawk, the world's #1 swordsman, and won the title of Sword God. Even so, everyone still felt that Bai Ye seemed to be lacking something compared to the other three Marine generals. Someone soon realized that Bai Ye didn't seem to have played against the four emperors. This can be clearly seen in the information given by Marine. Even when Byakuya fought his way out of the ambush of the beast pirates, he had the help of his former general, Black Arm, Zephyr. He didn't fight Kaido alone. Any current Marine general can face one of the four emperors head-on. Just like Garp, although not a Marine lieutenant general, chased Roger One Piece across the ocean. Akainu once fought against Kaido of the 100 Beasts for 3 days and 3 nights, etc. All prove that the general is strong enough to compete with the four emperors' pirate group. However, this was not reflected in Bai Ye. This is what they feel Bai Ye lacks when he becomes the fourth general. But they didn't know that the White Yoruichi fought against most of the beast pirates and scared Kaido into fleeing in panic. Bai Ye would not talk about this matter because it would be too exaggerated and would easily arouse others' suspicion. It was even more impossible for Kaido to talk about such embarrassing things. After returning home, he directly issued a hush order, strictly prohibiting all senior cadres from mentioning the matter. Therefore, except for Bai Ye, Kaido and others involved, this matter was not known to the outside world. When Bai Ye learned about the rumors on the sea, he didn't care at all. For Bai Ye, the title of General Marine is not the most important. Improving his position and gaining world power is what Bai Ye values. In order to meet Dorag, Bai Ye directly asked warring states for a vacation, saying that he wanted to return to the East China Sea. After being away from my hometown for a long time, it's time to go back and have a look. Go meet Colonel Vaughn, Kirby, and Nami, and see if you can meet the pirate Wong Luffy. Bai Ye took some soldiers with him and embarked on the voyage back to the East China Sea on the Jijo. Because he wanted to see Dorag, Bai Ye didn't bring anyone with him. At this critical moment when he was about to become a Marine general and obtain the world's source of power, Bai Ye had to be more cautious. When leaving New World, I also did not go to Mary Joa, but still chose to pass through Fishman Island through the coating. When Bai Ye appeared on Fishman Island, the fish people on Fishman Island all escaped from Bai Ye's sight as if they had seen a ghost. After the last incident, the Fishman Island that was slightly angry instantly turned into a ghost island, with no trace of anyone on the entire island. Within 5 minutes, King Neptune brought the eldest prince Sharkstar to Bai Ye. Neptune looked at Bai Ye in front of him with mixed feelings in his heart. Call him hateful. Bai Ye's attack saved his life and the future of Fishman Island. He had no right to hate Bai Ye. But if you want to say gratitude, Neptune may have some in his heart, but most of it is still entangled. After all, tens of thousands of fishmen died directly at the hands of Bai Ye. After that incident, the population of Fishman Island was reduced by nearly 80%. No one wants to see such huge casualties. And since then, the fishmen on Fishman Island seem to have contracted a strange disease. Whenever they hear the name Bai Ye, they will tremble all over and it will take a long time to recover. This also makes the two words, White Knight, a name that cannot be mentioned on Fishman Island. Neptune said in a complicated tone, Lieutenant General Bai Ye, oh, no, now it's General Bai Ye. The future of such a young Marine General is simply unimaginable. The official appointment hasn't come down yet, just call me Lieutenant General Bai Ye. Bai Ye looked at the deserted Fishman Street and said with regret, I passed by Fishman Island this time, and I plan to see if there are any fishmen without eyes who are ready to cause trouble and help you solve it. As a result, these fish people hid directly when they saw me, which was really disappointing. Bai Ye recalled that the last time he killed more than 50,000 murlocs with one sword and gained nearly 40,000 world source power, Bai Ye felt extremely satisfied. It's a pity that such good things cannot come more often. Shark Star on the side looked at Bai Ye's regretful shaking of his head, and thought to himself, do you want to help or kill, don't you have a clear idea in your mind? I'm so embarrassed to point you out. Neptune might be afraid that Bai Ye would have murderous intentions again and said quickly, Lieutenant General Bai Ye, don't worry. Since the last time, you have solved all the fish people with evil intentions. The current Fishman Island is quite peaceful, and nothing will happen again. Quote. By the way, where is that guy Jinbei? Jinbei went out a few days ago and hasn't come back yet. Faced with Bai Ye's inquiry, Neptune did not tell the truth. In fact, Jinbei was recuperating in the Dragon Palace, but Neptune was afraid that Bai Ye would conflict with Jinbei again, so he said that Jinbei was not on Fishman Island. Bai Ye glanced sideways at Neptune, but there was no truth in the old man's mouth. I spared Jinbei's life last time, so he owed me a favor. Do you remember this? Remember. Neptune nodded repeatedly. Now it's time for Jinbei to return the favor. When he comes back, you tell him and ask him to announce his withdrawal from Shichibukai. This favor will be returned. Forehead. Upon hearing Bai Ye's request, Neptune did not agree on the spot. Jinbei was originally invited by the world government to become Shichibukai, in addition to being able to acquit the arrested fish people. This is the world government's goodwill towards Fishman Island to strengthen interracial harmony. If Jinbei announces his withdrawal from Shichibukai to the world government, in the eyes of the world government, this is a sign that Fishman Island does not want to coexist harmoniously with humans. It completely goes against the true wishes of Princess Otahime, Neptune, Jinbei and others, and is equivalent to wasting their efforts over the years. So even though there were situations that might anger Bai Ye, Neptune still didn't agree to it. Bai Ye half smiled but said, what? Don't you plan to return this favor? Even though Neptune and others were under the sunlight under the sea, they did not feel any warmth at all. As if you were in an ice cellar, the biting cold crazily penetrated every pore of your body. Neptune looked at Bai Ye in shock. Could this guy be ready to take action again? Is Fishman Island really going to be destroyed this time? Just when Neptune, Shark Star and others were worried, Jinbei's voice suddenly came from the direction of Ryugu. Etc. As a fish man, Jinbei was extremely fast in the water, almost as fast as the blink of an eye, and appeared in front of Bai Ye. Jinbei looked serious and said in a deep tone, what happened last time was indeed my fault. You spared my life and I owe you a favor. But quitting Shichibukai will have a huge impact on Fishman Island, so I really can't do it. Quote. Having said this, Jinbei paused and continued, in order to repay this favor, I am willing to commit suicide in front of you. I hope you will not embarrass King Neptune or the Fishman Island. After saying this, Jinbei saw a powerful water ball gathering in the palm of his right hand and slamming it towards his head. Jinbei. Neptune shouted anxiously. Jinbei's actions were beyond everyone's expectations. In order to repay Bai Ye's favor, but not wanting to damage the relationship between Fishman Island and the world government. So Jinbei was willing to sacrifice his own life to repay the favor. When Bai Ye saw Jinbei's decisive move, he thought to himself, he is indeed the sea hero, Jinbei. He only had the wrong name, not the wrong nickname. When the water ball was only 1 centimeter away from Jinbei's head, Byakuya shot away the water ball like a ghost. Snapped. Jinbei slapped himself on the forehead, making a crisp sound. Huh, I'm actually not dead. Jinbei looked confused with a bright red slap mark on his forehead. Although Neptune did not see Bai Ye's action clearly, he knew that Bai Ye was the only one who could prevent Jinbei from committing suicide. So, Neptune quickly thanked Bai Ye. Thank you Lieutenant General Bai Ye for taking action. Jinbei looked at Bai Ye with some surprise. He had not met Bai Ye often, and he didn't know Bai Ye very well. But from what he saw and heard, and what Neptune told him, he could roughly judge that Bai Ye was an extremely murderous and domineering person. So when he is unable to repay the favor, Jinbei will directly choose to commit suicide. To avoid being implicated in Fishman Island. But he hadn't thought that Bai Ye would actually save his life at the critical moment. Bai Ye said calmly, the abolition of the Shichibukai system is a foregone conclusion. Whether you retreat or not, the outcome of Shichibukai will be the same. Moreover, your hope of harmonious coexistence between Fishman Island and humans rests on the world government, which is undoubtedly the stupidest idea. Quote. After hearing this, Neptune and Jinbei were stunned. This sentence could sound normal from anyone, but it would seem extremely abrupt when it comes from Bai Ye, who is about to become Marine General. You must know the meaning behind this sentence is too deep. To put it bluntly, Bai Ye was just denying Jinbei's idea. To put it more seriously, Bai Ye is expressing his dissatisfaction with the world government. If word spreads, Byakuya's appointment as Marine General will probably be removed before he has been appointed. Neptune was not an ignorant person, so he quickly asked the people around him to evacuate, and asked, why did Lieutenant General White Knight say this? Bai Ye asked back, you said that if fishmen and humans coexist harmoniously, which place on the sea has the most fishmen and mermaids? Neptune and Jinbei said without thinking, Sabayati Islands. The answer to this question is obvious. After all, Fishman Island is located 10,000 meters above the sea surface in the Sabayati Islands. And most fishmen and mermaids are unwilling to leave Fishman Island for too long. Therefore, given the choice, they will almost only operate in the Sabayati Islands. Bai Ye sneered, but the humans on the Sabayati Islands have not yet coexisted in harmony. Do you still expect harmony between humans and fish people? Every time the Draco visited the Sabayati Islands, hundreds of civilians lost their lives or became slaves. And that's just for civilians. Moreover, every time the Tianlong people go to auction, they will spend a lot of money to buy fishmen and mermaids as their private slaves. If the celestial dragons discover that there are a large number of strong fishmen and beautiful mermaids on the Sabayati Islands, and they are all free, I'm afraid that within 3 days, the entire Fishman Island will be captured and exterminated by the celestial dragons. Although Bai Ye did not say these words explicitly, both Jinbei and Neptune knew that Bai Ye's words were referring to the celestial dragons. The largest rights organization among humans is world government, and world government serves the Draco people. As long as the Draconians have a desire for fishmen and mermaids, then it will be impossible for Fishman Island to live in harmony with humans in this life. It's not that Neptune and Jinbei don't understand these principles, it's just that they are unwilling to admit it. Because if they want to change all this, the first thing they have to face is to change the Tianlong people. But this is something they can never do. Neptune asked tentatively, Lieutenant General Bai, what do you mean? Generations will change sooner or later, it just depends on whether you are willing to be the one to promote the changes in generations and speed up the change. Jinbei asked, what about abolishing the Shichibukai system? Bai Ye said calmly, it's just the first step. As soon as these words came out, the two of them took a deep breath. He did not expect that Bai Ye, as a newly promoted Marine General, would have such terrifying thoughts and even want to overthrow an era. After thinking for a moment, Jinbei said decisively, in that case, I will retreat. Bai Ye had already talked to such an extent, how could they not understand? Instead of placing all hopes on the impossible world government, it is better to place all bets on Bai Ye. This is the true thoughts of Neptune and Jinbei. Bai Ye only stayed one night on Fishman Island and set off again early the next morning. Neptune and Jinbei came out to see Bai Ye leave, watching the Jeju disappear gradually. Neptune asked Jinbei in a panic, do you think it's really possible for Byakuya to push forward this era? Thinking of what we talked about yesterday, Neptune always felt frightened. Jinbei said without any hesitation, in the entire sea, there is no more suitable candidate than Bai Ye. Furthermore, Fishman Island is already like this, and the situation has always been quite dangerous. If we don't make changes, I'm afraid it will perish soon. Quote. Neptune sighed and said nothing. Instead of going to destruction silently, it is better to fight vigorously while there is still strength. Even if you fail at that time, it will be better than the regret before silently perishing. However, at this time, Bai Ye was quite satisfied with the conversation last night. Congratulations to host for successfully changing the plot. Jinbei joins the Straw Hat Pirates. Jinbei announced his withdrawal from 7 Warlords of the Sea. Wait, reward world source power, 15,000 points. In fact, Byakuya only said this after coming into contact with Neptune and Jinbei and seeing Jinbei committing suicide in order to repay his favor. After all, seeing that a character is good in the original work does not necessarily mean that he is really good. Only after actual contact can we make the most correct judgment. However, after the conversation last night, Jinbei and Neptune were moved by Bai Ye's words. This makes it impossible for Jinbei to join the Straw Hat Pirates again. So Bai Ye directly changed the plot point, which was an unexpected surprise. As for the way back to the East China Sea, Bai Ye's purpose was very clear. Let all the Shichibukai in office announce their withdrawal, making the 7 warlords of the sea system completely an empty shell. In this case, Bai Ye can earn a lot of world source power again. Get rid of the dead crocodile and the Doflamingo imprisoned in Impel Down. Mihawk and Jinbei agreed to announce their withdrawal. There are 3 remaining 7 warlords of the sea, Empress, Hancock, Moonlight, Mariah, and Tyrant, Bartholomew Bear. Faced with Tatsumaki's ridicule, Lucci and the others had to lower their heads, lying down and letting Tatsumaki speak. You are still 3 grown men, but you can't even fly, and you still need my help. It's really embarrassing. However, Bai Ye didn't pay attention, but gave instructions to Enel and others. It depends on whether the 2 of them can cooperate. If they don't, the only outcome will be death. After all, when they were in the palace of Dressrosa, they said that Tornado was not strong enough and was far inferior to Byakuya. As for the remaining 2, Bai Ye is not going to meet them as Marine, but to solve this problem as Yi. Loli is like this, her mouth is too upright. Byakuya and Tatsumaki flew towards the daughter island together. Even thinking about it now, Tatsumaki's cheeks feel hot, and his body seems to have undergone some strange changes. Shang is a member of the Revolutionary Army. Bai Ye only needs to mention this matter to Delog, and it will probably be completed. As night fell, Bai Ye put on a black waning moon robe, put on a pitch-black mask, left the Jijo, and blended into the night. I understand. Enel nodded. Because except for Enel and Tatsumaki, the other three do not have the ability to fly in the air for a long time. As a result, he was recorded in the tornado, and he has been tormenting them a lot since then. After seeing Bai Ye, Tatsumaki snorted coldly and turned his head to the side, pretending that he didn't see it at all. These 5 people are Tatsumaki, Sonic, Enel, Lucci, and Luo who followed Byakuya all the way from the New World. After all, it was really shameful that Bai Ye was tangled up on the spot last time. This time we divided our forces into 2 groups. Tatsumaki and I went to the Amazon Lily Kingdom, the pirate country of Daughter's Island, to deal with the Empress, Boya Hancock. So even if you force several other people to quit Shichibukai as Yi, you don't have to worry about others connecting Byakuya with Yi. When Bai Ye arrived, he happened to see this scene and joked to Tatsumaki, I didn't expect that little Tatsumaki has such a domineering side. Even Sonic, the strongest among them, did not dare to speak out in the face of Tatsumaki's ridicule, so how could Lucci and Luo dare to speak? And in the midair not far away, there were also 5 people wearing black waning moon robes, seeming to be waiting for someone's arrival. Since the other 3 people have no flying ability, the 4 of them can only find an unlucky pirate from the sea. And the 4 of you are going to the Devil's Triangle, find Moonlight, Moria, and just deal with it directly. However, Enel's power of seeing and hearing combined with the ability of the Thunder Fruit allows him to search in a large area and find Moria in the shortest time. The reason why Bai Ye is so divided makes sense. The Devil's Triangle is ridiculously large and the white fog is extremely thick. It is extremely difficult to find traces of Moria in it. Empress Hancock, whose peerless appearance is rated as the most beautiful woman in the world, by the world, is Bai Ye's first target. Because Byakuya, Mihawk and Jinbei all made a private agreement to quit Shichibukai and did not publicize it. After arriving at the Sabayati Islands, Bai Ye met Smoker and Rayleigh before leaving again. Bai Ye looked at Tatsumaki's arrogant look and chuckled. He screamed so happily when he was beaten. Especially after seeing Bai Ye, this feeling became even stronger. Tatsumaki put his hands on his hips, looking like a big sister, and said to the 3 people except Enel. Now I'm pretending not to know you. The effect is quite obvious. Enel couldn't help at this point, so they could only stay high in the air with the power of the tornado. Chapter 172 Intimidation. Advertise here. Daughter Island, Amazon Lily Kingdom. The palace in the center of the island is the accommodation of Boa Hancock, the emperor of the Amazon Lily Kingdom and the pirate empress. It was late at night, the entire island was dark, and almost everyone had already rested. But the lights were brightly lit inside the palace, and there were quite heated arguments. Shiji, we must start thinking about the country's next plan. We can't continue to live in such a hazy state. A short old woman was standing in the palace, her tone slightly anxious. As the former king of the Amazon Lily Kingdom, she was known as Grandma Z on the island. In front of Grandma Yi, there is a throne on a high level, and sitting on it is a beautiful woman. Her black hair is spread over her shoulders, her skin is as good as snow, and her eyes are like a pool of clear water. She has a noble and elegant temperament that attracts people. But there is something seductive about Leng Ao's agile demeanor, which makes people unable to help but be haunted, as if their souls will be taken away just by looking at him. This beautiful woman is none other than the pirate empress, Boya Hancock. At this time, Hancock is about 27 or 8 years old, and is at her most attractive age. She is slightly younger than she was in the original work, making her even more exciting. Compared to the anxious mother-in-law, Hancock's expression was extremely calm. His pair of slender and well-proportioned legs looked like lotus feet carefully carved out of beautiful jade. Hancock's appearance, even if a woman sees it, will probably arouse desire in her heart. The Igia were unwilling to join Shichibukai, but you had to let me join. After the Ika joined for Hinajima, now you ask me to think about what will happen after quitting Shichibukai. The I family doesn't have that much free time to play around with you. Quote. Grandma Zai anxiously hit the ground with her snake stick and said bitterly. Snake Princess, since Marine and the world government reached an agreement to abolish the Shichibukai system, your Shichibukai status will be cancelled sooner or later. Moreover, these days, my mother-in-law has read in the newspaper that Mihawk and Jinbei, one of the original 7 warlords of the sea, have announced their withdrawal from Shichibukai. This made Grandma Yi, who was already very concerned about the situation in the sea, instantly feel that something was not right. Although it was not stated clearly in the newspaper, Grandma Yi felt that there must be other forces acting secretly. That's why he persuaded Hancock so sincerely to make preparations early. Hancock said indifferently, so what? Isn't it cancelled yet? I'm afraid that our Amazon Lily Kingdom will be destroyed before it is officially cancelled. Hancock knitted his beautiful eyebrows together, bit his teeth lightly, and showed a domineering and decisive look. That's enough. Don't continue to be alarmist here. As long as Igia is in the kingdom, it will never perish. With that said, Hancock instructed the guards on both sides to drive Grandma Yi out. Grandma Z, who was being held up by the guards, shouted, Shiji. Now is not the time for you to be willful. The life and death of the kingdom all depends on your thoughts. Hearing this, Hancock stood up, with his graceful figure clearly showing off, and walked slowly in front of Grandma Z, raising an all-powerful face, and said extremely arrogantly. Even if the entire country perishes because of this, Igia will definitely be forgiven, because Igia is so beautiful. The charm that Hancock exuded at this moment cannot be described in words. Whether it was the mother-in-law or the guards in the palace, they were all fascinated by Hancock's charm, and pink hearts appeared in their eyes unconsciously after looking at Hancock. Hancock took this opportunity to kick Grandma Za out of the palace and ordered the guards on both sides, prepare water. The Ai family needs to take a bath before going to bed. After Hancock left with a swaying figure, Byakuya and Tatsumaki, who had been observing the movement below on the palace, spoke. Tatsumaki puffed up his cheeks and said with an angry expression, this woman is really narcissistic, she really thinks she can do whatever she wants just because she is beautiful. Besides, she is not the only one who is beautiful. Quote. Bai Ye looked at the angry tornado and thought to himself, why do women bother women? Even Byakuya and Tatsumaki were amazed by the charm that Empress Hancock showed in that moment. Even though both of them have extremely strong telekinesis, they are extremely resistant to this kind of spiritual temptation. I have to praise Hancock as the most beautiful woman in the sea. Even the tornado was slightly inferior to Hancock. Although Tatsumaki is beautiful, her body and appearance are still at the stage of 13 or 14 years old. She is a standard little loli, like a green apple. Hancock, on the other hand, is a completely ripe peach, with a well-developed figure, a slim waist that can be grasped, smooth and straight long legs, and a crazy face. For most men, except for some chain bronze masters, if they have to choose between the two, they will probably choose the latter. But Bai Ye is different, he wants them all. Looking at the empty palace, Tatsumaki asked, then what should we do next? Bai Ye said without hesitation, is there any need to ask? Just go and chat with Hancock. How could Bai Ye, who was familiar with the methods of defeating Hancock, miss Hancock's great opportunity to take a bath? Besides, he happened to touch a beautiful woman while she was taking a bath, so there was no reason to ignore her. If you don't look at it, you're no better than a beast. Before Bai Ye left, he suddenly thought, if I really get Hancock, that would be Luffy's fault. In this case, it can be regarded as forcibly changing the plot point, right? If he could, wouldn't he not only be able to earn the power of the world, but also capture the most beautiful woman in the sea? A perfect double shot. As for Straw Hat Luffy, I think sooner or later it will be changed to Cuckold King Luffy. With the idea of not being human, Bai Ye and Tatsumaki followed Hancock to the bathroom. Along the way, Bai Ye's knowledge and domineering spirit were responsible for blurring her perception, so no one noticed that there were two more guys in black robes in the palace. The overall style of the bathroom is similar to that of ancient times. There is a large square pool in the middle. The rising heat makes the smoke envelope the bathroom, making it even more charming. Hancock walked into the bathroom, closed the door, and walked to the sink amid the smoke, slowly taking off his light clothes. A jade body that is indescribably beautiful and full of allure gradually enters the pool. The delicate rose petals on the water surface slide across the smooth jade skin. The difference between the two colors makes people yearn for it. Hancock was lying in the pool, with a look of thought on his face, and his jade arms raised to trickle down the water, as if bathing would relax his mind and allow him to think better. Although Hancock had previously dismissed his mother-in-law's words in the palace, as the emperor of a country, how could Hancock not know the seriousness of the matter now? Hancock's biggest purpose in joining Shichibukai was to prevent the Amazon Lily Kingdom from being attacked by Marines again. The Amazon Lily Kingdom has an extremely special geographical location, surrounded by windless zones, and countless giant Poseidon-like creatures live under the sea. Originally, this was the natural best line of defense for the Amazon Lily Kingdom. But because of the latest technology developed by Marine, as long as the sea tower stone is embedded in the bottom of the warship, this will prevent Marine warships from being attacked by Poseidon-like creatures when crossing the windless zone. This leaves the Amazon Lily Kingdom exposed to Marine's forces at any time. As long as Marine is willing, he can directly destroy the Amazon Lily Kingdom at any time. Under this pressure, Hancock had to agree to join Shichibukai. But now, Marine has taken the initiative to propose to the world government to abolish the Shichibukai system, but the world government, facing the resolute Marine, had no choice but to agree to abolish the Shichibukai system. For a Shichibukai like Mihawk who lives alone, one person is full and the whole family is not hungry. There is nothing to worry about. But for a big pirate like Hancock, who is fixed on an island and has a country of people to take care of, it is a very dangerous signal. With the Shichibukai identity about to be abolished, Hancock now has only two options. First, move the Amazon Lily Kingdom to other hidden islands to avoid being discovered by Marine. Second, find a big force for protection, such as the Four Emperors Pirates. With the strength of Hancock and the Nine Snakes Pirates, no matter which Four Emperors Pirates they choose to join, no one will refuse. But according to Hancock's character, she is not willing to succumb to others and become someone else's subordinate, and she deeply hates men. Calculating it this way, Even if she is willing to join, it seems that she can only join the Big Mom Pirates, the only female emperor's pirate group among the 4 emperors. However, the Big Mom Pirates had a conflict with the Yi organization some time ago. Big Mom was seriously injured by Yi, and the 2 major forces had officially forged a grudge. If he joins the Big Mom Pirates and is targeted by the mysterious Knight organization, his fate may not be much better than being attacked by Marine. When Hancock was in a dilemma, he suddenly heard a clear and sweet girl's voice coming from behind him. The thing printed on her back is so ugly. It looks like the mark left by the claws of a wild animal. Who? Hancock scolded, and with a casual move, he picked up the clothes on the rack and put them on, covering his flawless body. Since the clothes are meant for sleeping, they are as thin as gauze and cannot cover much of the body. A large area of snow-white skin is exposed. In addition, Hancock had just come out of the pool, with a lot of water droplets on his body, and his clothes were stuck to his skin, which clearly revealed Hancock's perfect figure. In a daze, Bai Ye even saw 2 protruding cherry-like dots under the clothes, as well as a hint of black. This half-covered ultimate temptation almost made Bai Ye lose control on the spot. Such a gorgeous scene, even if it were Sonic, he couldn't stop it. Boya Sandasonia and Boya Marigold, who were responsible for guarding the door, heard the movement in the bathroom and quickly came in to check the situation. Sister, what happened? Who are you? The 3 Hancock sisters instantly surrounded Bai Ye and Tatsumaki, looking like they were ready to take action at any time. Bai Ye got rid of the temptation with a strong determination, waved her hands and said with a smile, "We were just passing by, the children are still young, and I was so childish just now, I'm really sorry." "Are you a kid?" Tatsumaki retorted immediately. Facing the sudden appearance of 2 strangers dressed in extremely mysterious clothes, Hancock looked extremely serious and said in a cold tone, "Did you see the mark on my back?" Compared to being peeked at while taking a shower, Hancock was more concerned about being seen with the mark on his back. When Boya Sandasonia and Boya Marigold heard this, they were immediately shocked and knew the seriousness of the matter. Because Hancock and his 2 sisters had a tragic experience when they were kidnapped by human traffickers and became slaves of the celestial dragons. Therefore, the symbol symbolizing the celestial dragon slaves, the brand known as Flying Dragon's Hoof, is printed on their backs. Once this mark is made, it cannot be removed, even if you cut off the entire skin. When the injury recovers, the mark will still appear. For those who become slaves of the celestial dragons, this is a lifelong shame that cannot be erased. Even if they have escaped from Mary Joa and escaped from the clutches of the Draco. But as long as this mark exists, they will not be able to forget their status as slaves and their tragic experience. Every time he thinks about what happened back then, Hancock will become extremely panicked and his spine will run cold. It is precisely because of this that Hancock hates the celestial dragons so much. He also hates the mark on his back. In order to prevent the news that he was once a slave of the celestial dragon from leaking out, Hancock would never let anyone other than her 2 younger sisters see her back. During the bath, Hancock's 2 sisters were guarding the door and no one was allowed to enter. Unexpectedly, 2 mysterious people would suddenly appear in the tightly guarded palace. When Bai Ye wanted to say something else, Tatsumaki said bluntly, "So what if I saw it? It doesn't look good in the first place." As soon as these words came out, the 3 Hancock sisters almost fainted from anger. They have never seen someone so confident in spying on others taking a shower. Bai Ye heard Tatsumaki's provocative words and almost picked up Tatsumaki again and taught him a lesson in front of Hancock. Tatsumaki didn't know what the mark on Hancock's back meant to her. But Bai Ye knows. This undoubtedly opened up the scars in Hancock's heart that had not healed well and sprinkled a pinch of salt on it. How can this keep Hancock from being angry? Hancock glared at the tornado with almond-shaped eyes. Conqueror's domineering rage came out, and he gritted his teeth and said, "What did you say?" Tatsumaki curled his lips and said, "You want to take action. Before taking action, could you please pay attention to the identity of the enemy, so as not to bring disaster to your country?" Hancock's conquerors is not weak in dominance, but it pales in comparison to Shanks. For the current Bai Ye, it has no effect at all. Not even a little proficiency can be improved. At this moment, Bai Ye suddenly realized his identity. Facing Bai Ye's domineering behavior, Hancock, who has always been strong, once again felt that he was so powerless. Then there's only one way to die. Before Bai Ye could speak, Tatsumaki said what Bai Ye wanted to say. "Phew, we are a Knight organization. Just now, as long as Hancock stayed up for half a second, the 2 of them would be crushed into meat patties by telekinesis." When she first met these 2 mysterious people, she felt inexplicably familiar. She seemed to have seen this kind of attire before. Sandasonia and Marigold instantly felt themselves being squeezed by a terrifying force. This pressure came from their whole bodies, and blood began to flow from their mouths and noses. This made Bai Ye feel like he was leading a bad child. Hancock set his sights on Bai Ye, and thought to himself, if the opposite party was really a Yi organization, then this person must be Yi who had a bounty of 3.7 billion Baileys. What if I don't retreat? Hancock said not to be outdone. Yes, who are we? It seems like I have returned to the time when I was a slave of the celestial dragons, and the sky is not responding to the calls, and the earth is not working. As soon as the words fell, Boya Sandasonia and Boya Marigold were directly wrapped in telekinesis and suspended in midair, showing panicked expressions. We are gangsters. This time it was Hancock's turn to be in trouble. While taking a bath, Hancock was worried about whether joining the Big Mom Pirates would lead to revenge from the Night Organization. At this time, Bai Ye had already woken up, noticed Hancock's gaze towards him, and said coldly, "The purpose of our visit this time is to allow you to voluntarily withdraw from the 7 warlords of the sea." Tatsumaki snorted softly, acknowledging his identity. Announcement of withdrawal from Shichibukai in advance may provoke retaliation from the world government. After being reminded by the tornado, Hancock suddenly remembered that there was indeed a mysterious organization dressed like this on the sea. Bai Ye continued, too. But now, luckily, before I even joined, the Night Organization came to visit me, and I also discovered my biggest secret. 3. However, Bai Ye didn't pay too much attention to it. After all, even young men and women in the country could say that they miss you. His temporary gaffe should not affect his tall image. As soon as Bai Ye's 1 came out, Hancock immediately shouted, "I agree to quit." Although Hancock was extremely angry at this time, he did not completely lose his mind. Unexpectedly, the essence worm came to my mind for a while, and I almost forgot my identity. Therefore, Bai Ye calmly withdrew his telekinesis, and Sandasonia and Marigold fell to the ground, gasping for air. This multiple-choice question of whether to die early or die late made Hancock extremely embarrassed. But if we don't agree, the entire country may cease to exist after tonight. Bai Ye looked at Hancock with a slight panic on his delicate face and chuckled, "Very good, you made a right decision." Facing the threat of being naked by the Night Organization, Hancock's face became extremely ugly. This is really unlucky. Gate of opening, unlucky as hell. An idea flashed in Hancock's mind, and he seemed to finally remember it. The Conqueror's domineering energy that erupted from his body stagnated, and he exclaimed in shock, "Are you from the Night Organization?" Bai Ye would not give Hancock too much time to think, and started counting down directly. Chapter 173 The Empress joins the Night Organization. Advertise here. I can choose to quit Shichibukai, but I have a request. Hancock looked directly into Bai Ye's eyes. Bai Ye laughed and walked slowly to Hancock. Because the distance was so close, he could even clearly smell the fragrance on Hancock's body that could arouse a man's original desire. As soon as I lowered my head, I saw a large expanse of white snow. Facing Bai Ye's sudden walk-in, Hancock clasped his bright red lips tightly, resisting the thought of taking action and not taking a step back. Ever since Hancock escaped from Mariajoya, she had never had such close contact with a man. Bai Ye said coldly, "Do you think you are qualified to make a request?" There was a bit of pity in Hancock's expression, and he said extremely seriously, "The people on the entire Daughter Island are all born warriors, and there are also the 9 Snakes pirates." Having said this, Hancock paused for a moment and then said, "In addition to my concubine, I only ask you to agree to one thing." "Oh, tell me." Hancock took a deep breath, as if he had made some kind of decision. "Let the 9 Snakes pirates join the Night Organization, and let the Amazon Lily Kingdom hang the flag of the Night Organization." Bai Ye looked at Hancock very unexpectedly. Judging from the original work, Hancock's appearance was extremely arrogant, willful, and contemptuous of others. She doesn't care about the affairs of the kingdom, and is far inferior to the previous king, her mother-in-law. After the contact today, Bai Ye discovered that Hancock was still very worried about the Amazon Lily Kingdom. This can be seen from her desire to join the Night Organization at all costs. In fact, the arrogant character Hancock usually displayed was deliberately created by her in order to maintain the dignity of the emperor. After all, what people lack most, the more they want to show it. But in front of Bai Ye, Hancock has no power to fight back. If he is not careful, the entire kingdom will be destroyed. Even his deepest hidden secrets were discovered by the 2 members of the Night Organization. This suddenly made it impossible for Hancock to continue to maintain his arrogant persona. Want to join the Night Organization? Before Bai Ye came, he really didn't expect that Hancock would make such a request. But if you think about it carefully, this is not surprising. The Night Organization is known as the 5th Emperor of the Sea. It is extremely powerful and mysterious. No ordinary force dares to provoke him easily. Even if the world government wants to take action against the Night Organization, it needs to be fully prepared. Therefore, when the Amazon Lily Kingdom loses the protection of its Shichibukai identity, becoming a member of the Night Organization can actually better protect the Amazon Lily Kingdom. This coincides with Hancock's previous thoughts. It's just that the idea of joining the 4 Emperor's pirates turned into joining the Night Organization. As for the qualifications mentioned by Hancock, although almost every woman in the Amazon Lily Kingdom has mastered the armed hockey and is a powerful force, for Byakuya, it is just a matter of one punch. If Bai Ye really wants to mass-produce his subordinates, wouldn't it be nice to spend the world's energy to exchange for monster cells? Not only does the user's strength increase significantly, but they are also able to remain 100% loyal to themselves. Bai Ye looked down upon all of these conditions, but the last one made Bai Ye very excited. In fact, anyone with a discerning eye can see that Hancock only said such words when he was forced to do so. Hancock understood the meaning of Bai Ye's words and did not refute. Didn't really mean it. But it doesn't matter to Bai Ye. It doesn't matter. We are all a family from now on, there is no need to be so polite. But everyone else is just a non-staff member of the night organization. Only you are the main member of the night organization. Quote. Bai Ye looked at the beautiful smooth jade-like back in front of her and chuckled, no more. The process is secondary, the climax is the key. Hancock nodded repeatedly, she naturally understood this. Severe pain spread throughout Hancock's body, especially his back, which was as painful as countless ant bites. If Hancock had extremely rejected Bai Ye before, now Hancock couldn't help but have a good impression of Bai Ye. As a welcome gift for new members of the night organization, this potion can remove the mark of flying dragon's hoof from your back. Okay. Bai Ye clapped his hands. In that case, starting from today, the Nine Snakes Pirates will officially become a member of the Ye organization. Although the strong melon is not sweet, it quenches thirst. As the older sister, Hancock was the first to try. The gleaming needle pierced the delicate skin until all the green medicine was injected. The pain shows that the medicine is really working. Bai Ye redeemed 3 quick healing potions from the system store and threw them to Hancock. For the 3 Hancock sisters, as long as they can remove the mark of the celestial dragon, it doesn't matter what the pain is. Is it as painful as being a slave to Mary Joan? This thing can even remove hidden wounds that have been dormant in the body for many years, not to mention the brand behind it. Ye, sir, can this really remove the mark? His bloodless face suddenly turned red, and he saluted Bai Ye. I would like to thank Master Ye for the gift of medicine. Listening to Bai Ye's words, Hancock picked up the quick healing potion as if he had found a treasure, and his originally dim eyes once again bloomed with moving brilliance. Hancock was so excited that he couldn't even speak coherently. Sandasonia and Marigold were equally surprised and shouted, Sister, the mark is really gone. Hancock stopped the 2 sisters' persuasion and said to Bai Ye, as the Emperor of Amazon Lily Kingdom, these are what I should bear. Because the pain caused by the medicine was too strong, Hancock broke out in sweat just now, making his already thin clothes even more unnecessary. Hancock turned around with a face full of joy and suddenly realized what he had just done. As long as we can earn world power, we can change Luffy's straw hat into a green hat. But when Hancock faced such intense pain, instead of letting out a painful groan, his pale face covered with sweat showed unspeakable joy. Bai Ye said jokingly, are you sure? For Hancock, nothing is more painful than becoming a Draco slave. As long as the mark of the celestial dragon can be removed from his back, it doesn't matter how much pain he endures. Bai Ye nodded and said, of course, you only need to inject the medicine into your body, but the process is a bit painful, and you need to persist until the moment the medicine ends. Hancock now stood in front of Bai Ye almost completely naked. Sandasonia and Marigold simultaneously dissuaded her, Sister, you don't have to do this. After a while, the effect of the medicine finally ended. Hancock quickly exposed his back and asked anxiously, is there still a mark? Chapter 174 Arriving at the East China Sea. Advertise here. A few days later, the Jizui was getting closer and closer to the East China Sea. By this time, Bai Ye had already left Daughter Island. The tornado stayed on Daughter Island to avoid possible accidents. Although Bai Ye agreed to Hancock joining the Night Organization, Bai Ye did not let her announce her withdrawal from 7 Warlords of the Sea immediately. Bai Ye understands Hancock's thoughts. Hanging the flag of the Night Organization in the Amazon Lily Kingdom can provide more than 90% protection. But this is not absolute. After all, there are always some stupid people in the sea, and they might do something if they get hot-headed. Therefore, the safest way is to turn Girl Island into an island similar to a sky island, floating in midair. In this case, no matter which force it is impossible to have an idea of Daughter Island. Thinking of this, Bai Ye suddenly thought that he seemed to have forgotten a certain big shot. Calculating the time, he should also take action in the East China Sea. If we happen to meet him when we return to the East China Sea this time, we can solve it easily. After all, his fruit ability is indeed very convenient to use. Just as Bai Ye was thinking about it, Sonic and others finally arrived at the Devil's Triangle. Why is it so foggy in this place? Being used to the sunshine on an empty island, Enel suddenly came to a place with no sunshine and purple mist, which made Enel feel very uncomfortable. Lu Chi advised, get rid of Moria as soon as possible, and then you can leave this ghost place. Can your hard network work in a place like this? Sonic asked. After hearing this, Enel used the power of seeing and hearing color hockey in conjunction with the ability of the Thunder Fruit, and made a general sense. Yes, but the range is smaller than on the empty island. In that case, let's get started. Enel spared no effort in conducting a large-scale search and quickly determined the specific location of Moria and others. The 4 of them passed through a strange forest and came to a cemetery garden. There were rows of broken tombstones on the ground. Thick fog was rolling in, and they always felt that there was an ominous power buried around them. The Bat Castle where Moria is located can be found through the cemetery. As a ninja, Sonic has an extremely keen observation of the surrounding environment and said vigilantly, the soil in these cemeteries is basically relatively new. I'm afraid something will come out of these cemeteries. As soon as he finished speaking, a white bone arm with some rotten flesh came out of the ground and grabbed Lu Chi's right ankle. Lu Chi, who had been alert for a long time, did not panic at all. Not only did he not dodge, but he kicked him in the arm. The huge force directly kicked the arm into pieces. However, this kick was like turning on a switch in the cemetery. Hundreds of graves shook violently at the same time, and zombie-like creatures crawled out of the soil one after another. The air was filled with a rotten smell, which was extremely unpleasant. The four of them were surrounded by hundreds of zombies and seemed in danger. Not far away, a slightly obscene voice suddenly sounded from behind the empty wall. Are you scared? Even if you are members of the Night Organization, you will not have any good juice to eat when you encounter the powerful Absalom. Absalom looked at the four surrounded Sonics through binoculars, with a proud smile on his lips. Absalom, a user with the transparent fruit ability, discovered the four Sonics through a telescope when they landed on the island, and determined their identities. It's just that although Absalom knew the identity of their night organization, he had no intention of reporting the news. He just felt that his own strength alone was enough to deal with the four of them. There is no need to alarm Lord Moria at all. However, what happened in the next second was completely beyond Absalom's imagination. Facing hundreds of zombies, Enel snorted, and hundreds of extremely dazzling thunder and lightning burst out from his body, directly illuminating the area as if it were bright daylight. A lifelike thunder dragon roared toward the sky, opened its thunderous mouth, and flew towards the zombies. Once these seemingly terrifying zombies are touched by a brontosaurus, they are instantly electrocuted into a ball of coke. Hundreds of zombies were wiped out by the brontosaurus in just 1 second. How is this possible? Absalom exclaimed in shock. The zombie soldiers he had accumulated over the years did not even last for a second. Enel, who opened his heart network, immediately sensed the presence of an enemy not far away. With a flash of lightning, Enel appeared directly in front of Absalom. No one. Enel frowned and looked at the open space in front of him strangely. Could it be that there is something wrong with the heart network? When Absalom looked at Enel who suddenly appeared in front of him, he was so frightened that he almost peed on the spot. If the person in front of me discovers me, wouldn't I be like those zombies and be electrocuted into a ball of coke? In order to save himself, Absalom quickly activated his strongest trump card, the 3 zombie generals carefully crafted by Moria. They are all made from the corpses of powerful men on the sea. The strength is completely different from that of zombie soldiers. The ground shook again, and 3 almost intact zombies crawled out of the ground. Just looking at their appearance, you knew that these 3 zombies were completely different from those garbage. Besides, Lu Chi kicked his legs on the ground, came to a zombie general, punched out, and smashed his head to pieces. It's the same Shichibukai. Did Mariah create this garbage just by hiding in this place? Lu Chi shook the dirt on his fists with disdain. Lu Chi felt that Moria's hiding place was more hidden and more troublesome to find. If they really found it, any one of the 4 of them could easily sweep through the Moria pirates. At the same time, another zombie general was directly cut in half by Sonic. Sonic was also not very interested in this trip. When Luo took action, he showed a different excitement from Lu Chi and Sonic. Luo looked at the weapon held by the zombie general in front of him and said excitedly, "This is one of the 21 skills of the Great Knife, Autumn Water." Zombie generals, unlike zombie soldiers, have partial memories before death. When he heard that Luo recognized the famous sword in his hand, the zombie general said, "I am Ryoma, a samurai from Wano country. This autumn sword." Before Long Ma finished speaking, Luo opened his hand and shot directly, room. Guiwei slashed several knives in the air, and Ryoma's body was instantly divided into several pieces. Chu Shui appeared directly in front of Luo and was caught by Luo. The fruit's power was released, and Ryoma, who was divided into several pieces, could no longer die. Where's all the nonsense? I'm not interested in listening to you telling historical stories. Luo looked at Chu Shui excitedly. He thought that this action was very boring, but he didn't expect that there was an unexpected gain. Are these guys really human? Absalom looked at the trump card in his hand. The 3 zombie generals were chopped off like melons and vegetables in front of the Night Organization, and his pants were almost scared to death. Is there such a big difference between the sea now and the sea 10 years ago? Absalom looked at Enel in front of him, swallowed a mouthful of saliva subconsciously, and thought to himself, he must not be discovered. The enemies are really scary. After they leave, he must quickly tell Lord Moria the news. Enel frowned and said, "Is it always right in front of you?" Although the enemy cannot be seen, it is not difficult for Enel. Countless purple thunderbolts were transmitted from Enel's feet to the ground, instantly electrifying Absalom, revealing his true appearance. At this time, Sonic and others saw that Enel seemed to have discovered something else, so they came together. Luo looked at Absalom's appearance and could tell at a glance that the guy in front of him was an assembler sewn together from various animal tissues. It's a rubbish sewing technique. The doctors on your ship are not skilled enough. Because Enel did not kill him, Absalom was still alive even after being electrocuted. Absalom was shocked. He didn't expect that his true identity would be seen through by someone from the Night Organization at a glance. Sonic said coldly, "Take us to Moria." As soon as Absalom opened his mouth, a stream of green smoke came out of his mouth, and he said with difficulty, "What do you want from Lord Moria?" As soon as he finished speaking, Absalom's right arm flew out several meters away, and the ninja sword in Sonic's hand was pointed at the tip of Absalom's nose. There are so many words to say. Lead the way or die. I'll take it. I'll take it. Absalom was completely panicked now. He didn't expect the people from the Night Organization to be so cruel. He endured the pain of his severed right arm and led the way. Of course, Absalom was not that honest. When leading the way, he conveyed the news of an enemy invasion and asked Moria to prepare in advance. Inside the bat castle, a bat made of shadows flew in from a small window and blended directly into a huge figure on the bed. As a shadow fruit user, Moria has the ability to control shadows. The bat just now is the embodiment of his ability. Moria sat up from the bed and said with a frown, an enemy invaded. Since being defeated at the hands of 100 beasts, Kaido in the New World more than 10 years ago, most of the crew members died in that battle. Moria lives in the Devil's Triangle with his few remaining men, dreaming of one day being able to return to the New World and defeat Kaido. Apart from agreeing to become a Shichibukai, Moria has done nothing attractive. But what he didn't expect was that in such a low-key situation, someone would actually come to his door. Isn't this bullying an honest person? The more Moria thought about it, the angrier he became. He stood up and prepared to use the secret trick he had used against Kaido on the intruders. Let Dahai know that Moonlight Moria also has a temper. But before Moria could walk out of the door, the palace door suddenly collapsed, and 5 figures stood at the door. Sonic 4, plus Absalom. Seeing the person coming, Moria, who was originally angry, suddenly felt a chill in his heart, and unexpectedly said, Ye organization. Although Moria is in the Devil's Triangle, this does not mean that he is not exposed to the latest news on the sea. He also heard about the powerful strength of the Ye organization. And judging from the unkind attitude of those who came from the Ye organization, I'm afraid there will be a fierce battle today. After Absalom brought the 4 members of the Knight organization to Moria, he suddenly breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that with the captain here, his life should be saved. Moria focused his gaze on the charred Absalom next to the Knight organization. The shadow under his feet instantly turned into a thin line, extending towards Absalom at an extremely fast speed. Ever since the battle with Kaido, Moria had few useful cadres. So in Moria's opinion Absalom cannot die. However, when the shadow was about to come into contact with Absalom's shadow, a foot covered with armed domineering stepped directly on Mariah's shadow, making the shadow unable to move. Moria looked at the man wearing a dove mask who stepped on his shadow in shock. Lucci picked up Absalom with one hand and said provocatively, now that we have found Moria, you are of no use to us. Absalom's eyes showed endless panic, and he was just about to struggle. But Lucci exerted a little force on his palm and directly broke Absalom's neck in front of Mariah. Moria was furious when he saw this, and said angrily, Ye organization, right? Do you really think that I, Moria, are afraid of you? How dare you kill my men in front of me? No one of you can survive today. The devil has left the triangle. Quote. Listening to Moria's threatening words, Lucci and the other 4 laughed out loud. I'm afraid this big fat man hasn't figured out what situation he's in now, right? Without saying a word, Lucci directly entered the half-orc form, turned into an afterimage, and rushed towards Moria. Lucci's idea was very simple. He didn't encounter a stronger opponent along the way, and it was boring to death. Now I have finally met the stronger Moria. If I don't take action, this mission will really be just a shopping trip. Lucci was not the only one who had this idea, the other 3 were also very interested in killing Moria. Enel saw it turned into a bolt of lightning and followed him closely, shouting, this big fat guy belongs to me, don't snatch it from me. Sonic, the strongest and fastest, had already arrived in front of Moria, the ninja sword in his hand flashing with cold light. Sonic chuckled and said, whoever gets there first gets it. Although Moria couldn't figure out what was going on now, from the mouths of these 3 guys from the Knight organization, Moria could clearly feel their contempt for him. It seemed that as soon as they took action, he would die in their hands. This attitude is just like Kaido's more than 10 years ago, who looked at himself like an ant. This made Moria even more furious, his eyes were red, and the veins under his pale skin popped out, and he said angrily, you are really going too far. But when Sonic, Lucci, and Enel were attacking Moria at the same time, Luo, who was standing still, shook his head and sighed, you are the fastest within 7 steps, but I am the fastest 7 steps away. Room. The target of the 3 men's attacks instantly became Absalom, whose neck was broken by Lucci, and Moria, who was in a furious state, suddenly appeared in front of Luo. Lucci and the others did not expect Luo to have this skill, and at the same time they scolded Luo for not practicing martial ethics. Unable to hold back his hand, he smashed the dead Absalom to pieces. A proud smile appeared on the corner of Luo's mouth. During his stay on the island, his hard training was not in vain. Injection shoot. Luo aims at the enemy by holding the sword in the middle structure. In Kendo, aims the tip of the sword at the opponent's body, and uses his ability to create a target-like crosshair, then aims at the enemy's vitals and shoots. The ghost cry was like a sharp sword piercing Mariah's heart, bleeding red blood. Moria screamed in pain. Faced with the siege of 4 people, he had to use all his strength to deal with it, otherwise he would end up dead. Shadow gathering place. Moria shouted loudly, and countless shadows spread into the house from everywhere and merged into Moria's body. These are the shadows that Moria has cut out from his enemies using his fruit abilities, which he has accumulated over the years. As more shadows are integrated into the body, Moria's nearly 7-meter-long figure further increases. The black dress she is wearing is broken by the swelling muscles, making her look extremely powerful. However, This has no effect at all on the 4 Sonics. Moria only looks bluffing, and it only takes a few moves to actually make a move. Lu Chi used shaving to come to Moria, and struck 6 King's Chong on Moria's soft belly, directly reducing Moria's waistline by more than half. Moria's mouth was wide open after being beaten, and the shadow that had just merged into his body fled frantically from his mouth. Moria ignored the pain and danced wildly in the air with his 2 big hands, trying to stuff the escaped shadow into his mouth again. But before he could make too many moves, Enel's Thunder Dragon came crashing down, causing Moria's eyes to turn white. His whole body was covered in smoke, and there was even a smell similar to barbecue in the air. At this opportunity, the purple shadow flashed, and Sonic struck a fatal blow with his sword. The sword slashed through Moria's huge head, and blood spattered everywhere. Moria's huge body crashed to the ground, crushing the floor and falling to the bottom floor, where it was covered by countless wall bricks. However, after solving Moria, the 4 of them felt very unhappy. Enel said indifferently, "Mission accomplished, let's go." Lu Chi seemed to have remembered something and said, "We haven't solved it yet. There seems to be a ghost fruit user under Moria. Sir Byakuya said that all we need to do is kill Moria. As for the ghost fruit user, let's just say she is lucky enough to escape." Sonic said indifferently. Lu Chi heard this and nodded silently. The 4 people left quickly. No one knew that Moonlight Mori, one of the Shichibukai who once dared to challenge Kaido, died quietly on his ship. Didn't attract anyone's attention. However, just after the 4 people left, a girl holding an umbrella and wearing Gothic-style clothes jumped out of the strange forest. However, when the girl came to the cemetery, she was stunned. Hundreds of tombs were empty as if they had been dug up by tomb robbers, and piles of charred debris could be seen everywhere on the ground. A bad thought flashed through the girl's mind: did something happen? So the girl floated in the air like a ghost, flying quickly towards the Bat Castle, but as soon as she saw the Bat Castle, the girl stopped. Most of the originally tall Bat Castle had collapsed, and among the exposed ruins, the girl even saw a figure covered by bricks lying on the ground. Lord Moria. The girl shouted in shock. But after the girl used her fruit power to remove the bricks, she collapsed to the ground in fear and fainted on the spot. Because she saw Moria with her head in a different place, and she couldn't accept such a strong visual impact. At the same time, Bai Ye, who had climbed over the upside-down mountain and was about to arrive in Rog Town, received a system message. Congratulations to the host for successfully changing the plot. The Straw Hat Pirates fight against Moonlight Moria. Moonlight Moria announces her withdrawal from 7 Warlords of the Sea, etc. Reward World Source Power. 10,000 points. Bai Ye showed a smile. It seemed that Sonic and the others started very quickly and had completed the task. Although the world source power obtained by solving Moonlight Moria is less, the world source power obtained by Bai Ye subduing the Empress is much more. Congratulations to host for successfully changing the plot. Hancock falls in love with Luffy, and the Empress quits the 7th warrior. Wait, reward world source power, 30,000 points. Conquering the world source power obtained by Hancock. It's even comparable to Bai Ye's revision of a major plot point in the original work. This shows the importance of Hancock in the original work. Bai Ye looked at the system panel with a smile on his face. World source power, 61,000. After General Marine's appointment as official, Bai Ye will be able to obtain a large amount of world power. By that time, the seemingly unattainable 100% integration will no longer be far away. In Rog Town, Marines from the branch base came out in droves and spread all over the streets and docks, attracting the attention of the town residents. On the street, a passerby asked the person next to him, "Marine, what's going on? Is there any big shot coming to put on such a big show?" The person who was asked by a passerby was relatively well informed and said quite complacently, "I'll let you get it right. A big shot is indeed coming." Passersby didn't believe it. What kind of big shot would come to the East China Sea? Are you kidding me? The East China Sea has been known as the weakest in the world for many years. A pirate with a bounty of 20 million belly is considered a big pirate. How can a big shot come to a place like this? Admiral Marine, have you heard of it? Admiral Marine. That's right, Marine's newest 4th general, Sword God, Bai Ye, is said to be arriving in Rog Town soon, so all the Rog Town Marine branch will come out to greet him. After hearing Bai Ye's name, passersby looked like they suddenly understood. Ever since Marine announced that Byakuya would become Marine's 4th general, the news had swept the world like crazy. Especially Donghai, who was born in Bai Ye, was even more delighted after receiving the news. After all, a man from his own sea area has become a Marine general, and everyone's face will be proud of it. When the time comes to meet the other 3 seas and talk about famous figures in their respective seas, they can also use Bai Ye to reply. And Bai Ye, who is about to become Marine general, returns to the East China Sea at this time, which can be regarded as a homecoming. Bai Ye nodded and said, "I understand, let the soldiers prepare to dock." General Marine, Byakuya, a leader of the Revolutionary Army, known as the most criminal man on the sea by the world government, went to report a Marine general, which no one would believe. There is quite a kind of heroic spirit of knowing that there are tigers in the mountains and preferring to travel to the Tiger Mountains. That's right, Byakuya went to the East China Sea to meet Dorag this time, intending to meet directly as Marine. Only when the White Knight is in the East China Sea will be calm for a period of time. General Marine, Byakuya. Makes sense. Bai Ye stood on the bow of the ship and looked at Rog Town getting closer and closer in front of him. He complained helplessly, what kind of habit does Dorag have? But with the advent of the Great Pirate Era, this seemingly ordinary request turned into an unattainable dream. At this time, Bai Ye suddenly realized that the marine uniform he was wearing, for him, in addition to representing the source of the world, also represented an unshakable responsibility. The pirates who usually frequented Rog Town were running away like crazy at this time, fearing that they would be too late to escape, and happened to meet Marine General Bai Ye. By that time, Dorag would bow to him even if he saw that he was unwilling to give in. It would be considered that he was determined. Yes, in Bai Ye's thoughts, the Ji-Zui gradually docked at the dock in Rog Town. When Bai Ye got off the ship, all the soldiers and people present shouted. The meeting place must be chosen in Rog Town. If nothing else, the most intuitive point is that when the news of Bai Ye's arrival in the East China Sea spreads, all the pirates in the entire East China Sea will stop a lot. If you want to be like before, running around the world without anyone caring, the situation is completely different. As for whether Delog would leak his identity, Bai Ye was not worried about this at all. When Bai Ye leaves the East China Sea, the pirates in the East China Sea will pick up swords and guns again and threaten these ordinary people in the East China Sea. A strong man of General Marine's level could kill them all with just one breath. General Bai Ye, Rog Town will be arriving soon. Colonel Pierce is already waiting for us at the dock with his people. When Bai Ye faced the cheers of the people, he felt inexplicable emotion in his heart. The pirate didn't want to attract General Marine's attention at this time. Bai Ye didn't want to be like this, but after he became a Marine general, his every move attracted the attention of countless people. After all, confidence is a good thing, but overconfidence is a recipe for death. And Bai Ye is confident that with his 9-year compulsory education, he can definitely fool Delog into nowhere. Quote. In this case, Bai Ye might as well negotiate with Delog with his true identity, which will not only show his sincerity, but also make it easier for Delog to trust him. Is the meaning of Rogue Town really that special? When the news of Marine General Bai's arrival in Rogue Town spread, and many pirates tried their best to stay away from Rogue Town. This is the most real appeal of ordinary people in the sea, hoping to have a peaceful and tranquil living environment. There is such a group of young pirates who are sailing in the opposite direction to the other pirates, sailing towards Rogue Town without fear of death. You can also directly ask Drago to ask the bear to withdraw from the Shichibukai position. If they do, their pursuit of their dreams will be aborted. Chapter 175 Revolutionary Army Spiritual Mentor, Bai Ye. Advertise here. At night, in a quiet room, Bai Ye sat at the table, crossed his hands, kept touching his index fingers, and looked at the phone bug on the table indifferently. As long as the phone buzzes, it means that Dorag has arrived in Rog Town and is willing to meet Bai Ye. But as news spread that General Marine had arrived in Rog Town during the White Night, Bai Ye believed that with Dorag's cautious character developed over the years of founding the Revolutionary Army, you can immediately tell that your true identity is actually Ye, the leader of the Ye organization. In this case, Bai Ye threw this multiple-choice question to Dorag. Now that he has shown his sincerity, it depends on what choice Delog will make. If the phone does not ring, it means that Dorag has given up the opportunity to cooperate with him. From then on, Bai Ye's attitude towards the Revolutionary Army was the same as towards the enemy. If the phone rings, Dorag is willing to cooperate even after knowing his identity. In this case, Bai Ye will consider giving some help to the Revolutionary Army within his ability. Just as Bai Ye expected, Delog picked up the phone, but hesitated whether to make a call. But thinking about the current situation of the Revolutionary Army and the words that Sabo conveyed back, Dorag finally gritted his teeth and made the call. Ba. Bai Ye smiled as he listened to the sound of the phone ringing. It seems that Dorag has made his choice. After picking up the phone, Dorag's slightly hoarse voice came from the other end of the phone. White Knight. Who would have thought that the leader of the Knight organization would actually be the newly appointed General Marine? It's really bold to play around with world government and Marine. If you are not bold, how can you dare to cooperate with the Revolutionary Army? Dorag was silent for a moment and asked, where can we meet? Above Roger's execution platform. I see. 5 minutes later, Dorag and Bai Ye finally met above the square. Dorag was wearing a dark green robe, while Bai Ye was still wearing a black waning moon robe, but without a mask. Who would have thought that the leader of the Revolutionary Army and General Marine could actually chat face to face calmly? Although Delog already knew that Bai Ye was young, he was still shocked by Bai Ye's youth after seeing the real person. Byakuya doesn't even look much older than his son Luffy. But such a young guy has already become a Marine general. Secretly, he also controls the Knight organization, known as the Fifth Emperor of the New World, with a bounty of up to 3.7 billion Baileys. Dorag recalled that when he was Bai Ye's age, he still obeyed his old man's words and served as Marine Major General in the Marine Corps. However, when Delog was feeling emotional, Bai Ye looked at Dolag's dead fish face and suddenly asked a very abrupt question. Delog, Were the marks on your face removed by old man Garp using a slipper? Otherwise, how could it be so symmetrical? This question has been extremely curious to Bai Ye since he watched One Piece before. Many sea fans have discussed it. The most speculated is that Garp pulled it out with slippers. However, there is no explanation in the original work, so this guess has to be ignored. But Bai Ye happened to meet him now, so there was no reason not to ask. As soon as these words came out, Dolig's calm face showed some fluctuations, and suddenly the sky above Rog Town was filled with dark clouds. Covered up by a waning moon and a few dim stars, thunder and lightning were wandering in the dark clouds, as if they might fall at any time. Bai Ye didn't care about Dolig's reaction. Judging from the original work, Dolig's fruit ability should be related to the weather, summoning strong winds, lightning and thunder, which must be very powerful. But for Byakuya, unless Drago can summon Saitama's bald head like king, in the world of One Punch Man, it will be useless to summon any weather. As long as Dolog dares to take action, he will bring achievements to Bai Ye. It just so happened that there were many people talking about it in the sea, and Bai Ye had no great achievements on the surface. The meritorious service of apprehending the most vicious criminal in the world, the leader of the revolutionary army, Dorag, is enough to silence everyone. But Dorag could never have thought that he was only slightly dissatisfied with Bai Ye's words teasing him and had not yet taken action. Bai Ye was like a ghost, already wanting to capture him and imprison him in the city. As long as Dorag knew about it, how could he dare to talk about cooperation with a guy like Bai Ye who would fall out with him at any time? If you don't go to the world government and report Bai Ye anonymously, it's not bad. Dorag admonished himself in his heart, calm down, you must be calm, I am here to discuss cooperation, and I will not get angry with such a young man who is about the same age as his son. He is just a young boy who doesn't understand anything. Quote. After a while, Dorag calmed down his surging anger and said coldly, this is a tattoo, not a shoe print. When it comes to this, Dorag doesn't want to talk anymore. Bai Ye didn't ask any more questions, because from Dolig's attitude, he probably guessed that this shoe print might be related to the secret of the D family. Dorag may have been frightened by Bai Ye's questions, fearing that Bai Ye would ask some outrageous questions again. So, Dorag gate of opening came to the point, do you want to cooperate with the Revolutionary Army, as a member of the Knight Organization, or as a Marine General? Bai Ye said decisively, Ye Organization, my identity as General Marine is still useful. Now that he has become a Marine Admiral, Bai Ye is only one step away from becoming a Marine Fleet Admiral. Although world government's actions make Bai Ye feel very suspicious, in this case, there is no need for Bai Ye to choose to self-destruct. It will depend on the situation. Bai Ye's answer did not exceed Dorag's expectations. Just thinking about it, Bai Ye, as the leader of the Ye organization, must have his own plan for joining Marine, and naturally he will not expose his identity easily. But such a dangerous guy was lurking in Marine, which made Dorag feel a little uneasy. He was a little worried whether his old man would be killed by Bai Ye in the future. I was thinking about asking me to reveal this news to Garp so that he could be alert in advance. But he felt that with his old man's character, after learning the news, he would definitely go to Bai Ye to confront him. If Bai Ye knew that he was the one who told Garp the news and ruined his plan, the Revolutionary Army would probably suffer crazy revenge from the Ye organization. However, while Dorag was thinking, Bai Ye's next words directly filled his heart with anger. Bai Ye said casually, I think your Revolutionary Army has gone astray. There is probably something wrong with you, the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Dorag said with anger on his face, do you know what you are talking about? A guy who knows nothing about the Revolutionary Army is not qualified to judge the path of the Revolutionary Army here. If this is your attitude, then our cooperation can be cancelled. Quote. Am I wrong? The direction your Revolutionary Army has taken in recent years is to choose countries where there is a big conflict between the nobility and the common people. Inspire the common people's sense of resistance, join the Revolutionary Army, and work with you to overthrow the evil nobles. After listening to Bai Ye's words, the anger on Dorag's face turned into astonishment. He originally thought that Bai Ye didn't understand the Revolutionary Army, but he didn't expect that Bai Ye would explain clearly what the Revolutionary Army had done in these years in just a few words. Bai Ye didn't care about Dorag's astonishment. Anyone who has attended 9 years of compulsory education can see this kind of thing at a glance. Bai Ye continued, the starting point of your approach is not wrong, but the efficiency is really too low. Only at this moment did Dorag realize that Bai Ye really knew something about the Revolutionary Army, and he was probably not just talking about cooperation. What you said is indeed correct, but this method is most suitable for the Revolutionary Army that has just started. Bai Ye shook his head and said, that's not the case. I know that your Revolutionary Army has a strong intelligence network, and you need to give full play to this advantage. The excitement in Dolig's heart had been aroused by Bai Ye's words, and he quickly asked, how to use this? It's very simple. You have to spread the spirit of the Revolutionary Army. But we have already spread out. I'm not talking about spreading to one country, but spreading to the entire sea and all countries. You want the people of Dahai to know that they can rise up and resist when they are treated unfairly. And when publicizing, you must spread the stories about the nobles oppressing the common people and the stories about the common people winning through resistance. Give the oppressed people confidence and let them know that people in other countries can do this, and they can do the same. In this case, even if you Revolutionary Army members do not appear in that country, the oppressed people of that country will already be on the same front as you. Quote. Bai Ye's words undoubtedly made Dorag suddenly enlightened. If you really do what Bai Ye said, the efficiency will probably increase dozens of times. Now Dorag completely believed Bai Ye's cooperation. At this moment, he wanted to force Bai Ye to stay and let him stay in the Revolutionary Army to make suggestions. He completely threw away the idea of telling his old man Bai Ye's true identity. In Dolig's opinion, it's better to let Garp fend for himself. Compared with my old man, Bai Ye is still more important. Bai Ye looked at Dolig's excited look and felt extremely calm. He had long known that Dolig would become what he is now. Bai Ye, what else? Do you have any other suggestions? Dolig took out a small notebook and pen from his arms, as if he was a student who listened carefully to the teacher's lecture, and was ready to write down all Bai Ye's next words. What I just said is spiritual awakening, but a revolutionary spirit alone is not enough, it also requires a certain amount of support in terms of force. Otherwise, even if the oppressed people win, the nobles will be wiped out. But they cannot retain control of the country for a long time, because there are too many powerful people in this sea. Quote. When Bai Ye was talking, the pen in Dorag's hand never stopped. One look showed that this guy has been a good kid who loves to take notes since he was a child. Dorag understood the meaning of Bai Ye's words. In the absence of military support, even if the civilians achieved a temporary victory, later, they will be eliminated by the nobles who have more resources, the powerful marines, and the world government. If things go on like this, more civilians who have awakened the spirit of resistance will see their own powerlessness and become more stupid than before. Dorag said, but the current strength of the Revolutionary Army is far from enough to openly confront the world government. Bai Ye showed a mysterious smile and said confidently, that was in the past. Starting from the cooperation between us today, the Revolutionary Army will have the confidence to challenge the world government. Saying that, Bai Ye took out a heart-sized purple object from his arms. What surprised Dorag was that this purple object that resembled a heart was still beating like a real heart. The purple blood vessels on it are clearly visible, densely packed and twisted into a ball. This is the weird cell that Bai Ye just redeemed from the system store. Weird cells can greatly improve the physical fitness of the eater and transform them into a weird shape most suitable for fighting. The eater will completely obey the orders of host Bai, and the redemption requires 1 point of world source power. Close black lens bracket. Dolig pointed at the weird cell and said in surprise, this is. Bai Ye said lightly, this is something I developed at a huge cost, called the Heart of Justice, which can give the user great strength. Even people who are disabled or seriously injured can recover as before and control powerful power after taking the Heart of Justice. Quote. There is no way, if Bai Ye tells Dolig the name of the weird cell, even Dolig is a fool and he will understand that this thing is not a good thing. So Bai Ye had to give the weirdo cell a positive name to deceive Dorag. But when Bai Ye saw Dorag's face with the word disbelief written on it, he knew that with such a sunny name as Heart of Justice, Dolig was not fooled. At this time, Dorag looked at Bai Ye with eyes that seemed to say, I treat you as a spiritual mentor, but you treat me as a fool, right? At first glance, this thing has nothing to do with the word justice. Bai Ye coughed lightly, and then said in a deceptive way, ahem, don't think this thing doesn't look good. But you have to understand one thing, this is like a powerful devil fruit. Falling into the hands of the Revolutionary Army can help the Revolutionary Army liberate more oppressed people. But in the hands of the world government, it will become a butcher knife wielded towards the Revolutionary Army. There is no distinction between good and evil in things themselves. The most important thing is to see whether the user prefers justice or evil. It has to be said that Bai Ye's sincere words instantly made Dolig think. Yes, things are dead things, but the user is the living thing. Just because this thing looks weird, you can't just judge it as evil. The key lies in the people who use it. After figuring this out, Dorag suddenly became enlightened, bowed to Bai Ye and said gratefully. I have learned a lesson. It turns out that I have always been too superficial. After listening to what you said, I finally understood this truth. Bai Ye secretly rejoiced in his heart that there was no danger, but he still managed to fool him. Although Heart of Justice can provide powerful strength to the user, it also has a certain degree of side effects. You say. After Bai Yoruichi's lecture, Dorag's attitude towards Bai Ye was obviously much more respectful. Because it stimulates the user's potential at once. Therefore, after taking it, the user's strength is basically finalized, and the strength cannot be improved through conventional methods. Apart from that, there is no other impact. Quote. Bai Ye lied without even blinking, directly ignoring the fact that the user would only be loyal to himself. Dorag wondered, I wonder how powerful the Heart of Justice will be after taking it. Let's put it this way, if an ordinary person takes it, his strength should be that of a Marine Corps officer. If someone with a certain level of strength takes it, the highest level of strength can barely reach the level of a lieutenant general, and the weakest level can be a brigadier general. After listening to Bai Ye's explanation, Dorag instantly became dumbfounded. Looking at the beating Heart of Justice in Bai Ye's hand, blazing flames ignited in his eyes. Lieutenant General Marine. You must know that when Dorag left Marine and founded the Revolutionary Army, his position in Marine was that of Marine Lieutenant General. According to Bai Ye, although he barely reached the level of Lieutenant General. But you have to understand that Vice Admiral Marine is a mainstay in Marine. The Marine headquarters has trained them from generation to generation, and there are only more than 100 Marine Lieutenant Generals in total. If placed in the sea, it would be equivalent to a big pirate with a reward of 300 to 400 million belly. Even if you take the devil fruit, you need to continuously develop the fruit's ability to become a Lieutenant General level powerhouse. But this seemingly evil thing in front of him can make people become a strong man at the level of Marine Lieutenant General. This is the best treasure for the Revolutionary Army, which has just been established, has very scarce talents, and has a huge gap in combat power. And compared with its effects, the side effects can basically be ignored. Dorag swallowed and asked in a trembling voice, Bai, how many of these hearts of justice are there in total? Hearing this, Bai Ye was overjoyed that the fish finally took the bait. So, Bai Ye pretended, this thing is extremely expensive to produce, and our organization has invested tens of billions of baileys in research alone. It has just been successfully developed recently, and the quantity is not large. Delog said sternly, I understand that researching something like this must be laborious and laborious. Although our revolutionary army doesn't have much money, I still hope you can sell us your heart of justice. I will try my best to satisfy you. Quote. For the revolutionary army, which is extremely lacking in mid-level combat capabilities, even the devil fruit cannot compare to the role of the heart of justice. Bai Ye said with a look of heartache, since both of us have agreed to cooperate, I can be considered as semi-supporting the revolutionary army. 1 devil fruit can be exchanged for 10 hearts of justice. This is already the limit of the Knight organization. Quote. 10. Dorag lost his voice. Damn, I said too much. Seeing Dorag's shocked look, Bai Ye reacted instantly. But the words have already been spoken, and it is difficult to change them. Besides, 1 devil fruit can be exchanged for 1,000 points of world source power, which is equivalent to 1,000 hearts of justice. It's equivalent to 100 times the income, which is not bad. Seeing Bai Ye's remorseful expression, Delog was afraid that Bai Ye would regret it. So Delog quickly stepped forward, grabbed Bai Ye's hand, and said excitedly, thank you so much. Not only did you point out the direction for our revolutionary army, you also pointed out the direction for our revolutionary army. And sell us heart of justice at such a low price. I really don't know what to say. Quote. At this time, Dorag wanted to imprison Bai Ye in the revolutionary army. This is really a kind man. I'm afraid there will never be a good person like Bai Ye in the whole sea. Bai Ye was also very cooperative and said, oh, I can only make a small contribution to the oppressed people on the sea. Listen, this person's enlightenment is really nothing to say. Dorag is now more and more delighted to see Bai Ye. He is able to know so many truths at such a young age. As the top strong man in the sea, he is willing to help the people at the lowest level. Thinking of this, Dorag suddenly came up with an idea and said to Bai Ye, you have helped the revolutionary army so much, why not become the spiritual mentor of the revolutionary army? We have the same status as me, and together we lead the revolutionary army to overthrow the world government. Quote. Okay, since you said so, then I would rather obey your orders than be respectful. Bai Ye never expected that tonight's operation would go so smoothly. Bai Ye originally wanted to rely on the revolutionary army's intelligence network all over the sea to collect devil fruit for himself. The heart of justice was only used to give the revolutionary army motivation. Unexpectedly, he deceived himself into being the spiritual mentor of the revolutionary army. Moreover, his status is equal to that of Delog, which is really an unexpected surprise. When the time comes for him to take control of the 2 huge forces of the Marine and the revolutionary army, wouldn't it be that the world's source of power is in his hands? Delog happily patted Bai Ye on the shoulder and said, ha ha ha, in that case, I will boldly call you Bai Ye brother because of my age. Brother Dorag. Bai Ye was stunned and thought, if you calculate it like this, wouldn't Luffy become my great nephew? Accidentally, I ended up with 3 cheap nephews. Dorag was usually a cautious person, but Bai Ye's words today spoke completely to his heart, and also pointed out the future direction of the revolutionary army. Coupled with Bai Ye's actions of sacrificing his own interests for the people at the bottom. Everything made Dorag feel that Bai Ye and he were on the same journey, and not making a revolution would be a huge loss. If it weren't for the fact that Bai Ye was regarded as a marine general among marines, Delog would have really wanted to persuade Bai Ye to let him lead the revolutionary army with him. Bai Ye suggested that Dorag could choose a sea area and establish a country controlled by the revolutionary army to show the difference between the revolutionary army and world noble. At the same time, a small pirate ship gradually approached the dock of Rog Town. The flag flying on the sail was a skull with a straw hat. Before Luffy could retort, there were only 2 sounds of bang and bang, and Luffy and Zoro received a heavy punch on the head at the same time, causing a huge bump. So I must seek revenge from Bai Ye. Everyone was either shouting to seek revenge from Bai Ye, or challenging Bai Ye to fulfill the agreement. At this moment, Usopp even had the idea of jumping into the sea and escaping. Oh my gosh, are there any normal people on this ship? After learning about Byakuya's arrival in Rogue Town, Nami hurried to Rogue Town to meet Shiro Yoruichi. Listening to the heroic words of his companions, Usopp, who was hiding aside and holding the mast and shivering, almost cried. Are you really that brave? So Nami embarked on the old path again, going to the pirate ship to steal. The more the two chatted, the more they became more and more congenial, and before they knew it, it was approaching dawn. Nami clenched her small fists and yelled viciously at Zoro and Luffy, I don't allow you to call Byakuya by his first name, let alone take action against Byakuya. If you just come to me like this and take me with you, isn't this a collective courting of death? I must abide by the agreement I made with her. Quote. Defeating Bai Ye and gaining the title of Sword God is what I promised others to do. Quote. And we will continue to promote the revolutionary spirit and become a country that thousands of people yearn for. After hearing Luffy's words, Zoro, the three swordsmen who was half sitting on the deck, said coldly, Luffy, if you want to take action against Byakuya, you must be behind me. Hearing Bai Ye's suggestion, Dorag was also very interested. In fact, he had wanted to do this for a long time. Our identities are pirates, and Byakuya is a marine general. Luffy covered the bag on his head and said firmly, Nami, you don't know how many times I got beaten by Grandpa because of Byakuya. The most important thing is that my grandpa's fist hurts so much. It's just that the Revolutionary Army is weak and has the heart but not the courage. It seems to symbolize the Revolutionary Army overthrowing the world government and changing the entire era. That's right, Pirate Wong Luffy came to Bai Ye to seek revenge. Luffy sat on the sheep's head at the bow of the boat, looking excitedly at the approaching Rogue Town, and shouted, just wait for me, Byakuya, I will give you a good beating and give you a taste my pain. Since Byakuya defeated Mihawk, the former world's best swordsman, my goal is to defeat Byakuya. The most outrageous thing is that you are still afraid that Bai Ye won't see you. After saying that, a sad look appeared on Nami's face again, and she murmured, I wonder if Byakuya will be very disappointed in me when he sees me as a pirate again. If this is really the case, then I won't even be able to see Bai Ye's face. Quote. After a mistake, Nami almost died at the hands of pirates, but was saved by Luffy and Zoro who were passing by, so she stumbled onto Luffy's pirate ship. The sun slowly rose from the sea level, and the first warm ray of sunlight forced out the darkness and shone on the two of them. But who would have thought that building the town would be too expensive, and the 100 million belly she had would be spent soon. After Byakuya left, Nami originally thought that after the town returned to normal, she would join Marine and follow Byakuya's footsteps. As for the pressure from the world government, it is up to the Knight organization to resolve it. Zoro looked serious and said in the same firm tone, defeating the world's best swordsman is the agreement I made with her. But with Bai Ye's words, Dorag suddenly felt that maybe he could really give it a try. Chapter 176 Two major forces, completely destroyed. Advertise here. After this night's conversation, Dorag benefited a lot from Bai Ye and became more clear about the path of the Revolutionary Army. Before Dorag left, Bai Ye handed the Heart of Justice he took out to Delog and said, this Heart of Justice will be given to you for free. After you go back, you can find someone to take it. After confirming that its effect is real and effective, we will proceed with the transaction. 10 Hearts of Justice can be exchanged for one devil fruit. Quote. Delog excitedly took over the Heart of Justice, and said in a grateful tone, Brother Bai Ye, I'm really grateful to you. To tell you the truth, what is most lacking in the revolution are middle-level cadres. Having a Heart of Justice can greatly alleviate our urgent needs. Don't worry, I will do my best to collect devil fruits from the sea when I go back. Quote. Bai Ye chuckled and said, with this brother's words, I feel relieved. However, just as the two were about to say goodbye, they suddenly heard a powerful shout coming from the pier. Byakuya, please come out quickly. I, Luffy, am here to take revenge on you. Bai Ye and the somewhat dull Drago looked for the sound, and sure enough they saw an angry Luffy at the dock, rolling up his sleeves and clothes, looking like he was always ready to fight. Dolig's heart thumped, and he cursed secretly, he was so smart all his life, how come his son was like a lunatic? The old man has been teaching Luffy for more than 10 years, but he still looks like this. Unlike Dorag, Byakuya's attention was not entirely on Luffy, but on the three people behind Luffy. Nami, Zoro, Usopp, and the cook Sanji are missing compared to the original work. It seems that when he was in Wangwo, the warning he issued to him as a Knight organization still played a certain role. But what Byakuya didn't expect was that despite his interference in the plot, Nami and Usopp still joined the Straw Hat Pirates. Perhaps this is a certain degree of irreversibility of the original work. Bai Ye looked at Dorag and said helplessly, Brother Dorag, you heard it, my good nephew Luffy almost told me to get out. This is your son who rushed to the door to give me his performance. Don't blame me for being ruthless. After all, I still need to retain my identity as Marine General. Quote. Dorag heard the meaning of Bai Ye's words and said with a smile, I understand, I understand. But it's clear that Drago, as Luffy's father, went out to engage in the revolutionary cause when Luffy was young. He hardly ever accompanied Luffy. Therefore, for Drago, he felt deeply guilty towards Luffy. Even though it was his son who came to take the initiative to provoke him, Drago couldn't just watch Byakuya kill Luffy and ignore it. Since Dorag had completely treated Bai Ye as one of his own after this long conversation that night, he directly told Bai Ye all his thoughts. Brother Bai Ye, although I know this request may be a bit too much, I still hope you can let Luffy go. Even if he is imprisoned in Pushing City, that's fine. Quote. Delog looked solemn and said helplessly. This is the best he can do as Luffy's father. Let's not talk about whether he can defeat Bai Ye head on with force. Just Bai Ye's advanced theory on revolution, as well as the various benefits that cooperation with the Knight organization has brought to the Revolutionary Army, Dorag has a hard time making a choice. The most important thing is that this is Luffy taking the initiative to provoke Byakuya. A pirate from the East China Sea comes to provoke General Marine. It is normal for General Marine to kill the offending pirate casually. If you let it go, it will easily arouse others' suspicion. Seeing Dorag's anxious and helpless look, Bai Ye couldn't help but sigh and said, Brother Drag, don't worry. I will handle this matter properly and will not endanger Luffy's life. Bai Ye didn't know why he said these words. Maybe he was moved by a father like Delog who cared about his son. It may also be because killing Luffy would put him in a very embarrassing situation in the Marines. After all, as Garp's biological grandson, it would be fine if Luffy was killed privately. Now that we are on the bright side, if we kill him directly, how will Byakuya get along with Marine who is close to Garp in the future? Aokiji, Sengoku, Garp, and even Zephyr-sensei all have considerable influence on each other. Byakuya has been in the pirate world for more than 2 years. It is impossible to say that he does not have any feelings when getting along with everyone. At this time, Bai Ye was not like when he first activated the system, he would not hesitate to do anything in order to obtain a large amount of world source power. Moreover, there are artificial devil fruits that Caesar continues to create, and there is also a deal with Dorag that makes 100-fold profit. Bai Ye is no longer as fiercely competitive with the world's power as before. Under the combined influence of these factors, Byakuya said to Dorag not to kill Luffy. However, if he doesn't kill, he won't kill, but if he just lets Luffy go, it's also inconsistent with Byakuya's character. After Bai Ye and Dorag said goodbye, they quietly returned to the room and changed into marine uniforms. Bang, bang, bang. As soon as Bai Ye changed his clothes, there was a rapid knock on the door. General Bai, there are pirates making trouble at the dock. Colonel Pierce is no match for the invading pirates. The situation is extremely dangerous. Bai Ye opened the door and said, I understand. The original garrison in Rog Town was Smoker, the smoke fruit ability user, but after Bai Ye's changes, he became Colonel Pierce. Compared to Smoker, Pierce's strength is indeed much weaker. But Pierce is responsible for garrisoning Rog Town, which the East China Sea pirates must pass through before heading to the Grand Line. No matter how weak the strength is, it can't be much weaker. From this point of view, Luffy may be stronger now than he was at the same time in the original work. But Bai Ye didn't know that it was because of his unexpected appearance that Garp was envious and jealous of Zephyr. For this reason, Garp took several vacations and returned to Windmill Village, insisting on training Luffy into an even better marine by night. As a result, Luffy received many cares from his grandfather for nothing, and his strength naturally improved significantly. In Luffy's opinion, all the suffering he suffered was because of Byakuya, whom his grandfather often mentioned. That's why Luffy wanted to beat up Shiro Yoruichi to vent his anger. At the dock, Colonel Pierce and dozens of meters of soldiers all fell to the ground, wailing in pain. Luffy and Zoro stood arrogantly in the marine, shouting, Where is Byakuya? Isn't he a marine general? Why did he send such rotten fish and shrimps to deal with us? Bai Ye, are you afraid? Luffy's voice was so loud that even the people living around him could hear it clearly. Many residents opened their windows a little and looked outside quietly, wanting to see which group of pirates were so arrogant. Dare to openly provoke General Marine. Soon, someone recognized Luffy's identity and whispered, This seems to be Straw Hat Luffy with a bounty of 22 million belly. Do you dare to challenge Marine General Bai Ye with 22 million Baileys? Isn't this looking for death? Almost no one thinks that Luffy can defeat General Marine. Of course, except Luffy and Zoro. Dorag, who was worried that his son had not left yet, stood not far from the dock. Listening to Luffy's voice, he wished he could put on his marine uniform. He slapped Luffy hard on the face several times to make Luffy wake up. You lousy, I don't even dare to say such things, but you still shout so naturally. This is not the way to seek death. Nami stood behind Luffy a little disappointed and murmured, Byakuya must have seen me and knew that I was a pirate, so he didn't want to show up. Usopp, on the other hand, hugged the fence beside the ship tightly, with tears streaming down his face, and said thankfully, Fortunately, Bai Ye didn't show up, otherwise we would have been dead. But before Usopp could rejoice for a long time, Luffy shouted to himself, Usopp, come here quickly, let's beat up Byakuya together. Usopp's voice trembled as he said, I have a disease that will kill me when I see the White Knight. I can't get off the ship. Luffy didn't care what Usopp said, he stretched his arms infinitely and grabbed Usopp, trying to catch Usopp to his side. Usopp grabbed the railing tightly and shouted frantically, Luffy, no. Luffy said excitedly, come and give it a try, it's fun to fight General Marine. As an ordinary person, Usopp's strength was naturally far inferior to that of Luffy. He only persisted for a moment before being pulled over by Luffy along with the railing. But when pulling back, Luffy's slide made Usopp fly towards the street as if ejected, leaving an extremely miserable cry in the air. Luffy scratched his head and said awkwardly, I accidentally slipped my hand. Usopp, are you okay? At this time, a man wearing a marine uniform suddenly appeared on the street and grabbed Usopp, who flew out. The fence that also flew towards me was quietly crushed into powder and dissipated in the air before it even got close. Zoro was shocked when he saw this, and thought to himself, could this guy be Bai Ye? Due to the long distance and Usopp's obstruction, Luffy did not see that the person who caught Usopp was Byakuya. Instead, he thanked Byakuya and said, thank you for catching Usopp. You really scared me to death just now. Quote. Bai Ye held Usopp in hand and walked slowly to a position more than 20 meters in front of Luffy and Zoro. He said calmly, don't be so polite, otherwise I will be embarrassed when I take action later. At the same time, dense and orderly footsteps could be heard from the streets, and more than 200 marine soldiers surrounded the pier tightly. The marine soldiers that appear now are completely different from the marine soldiers before. Zoro keenly felt that the soldiers surrounding them now exuded a murderous aura, as if they had killed countless pirates with their hands. There are even some big pirates with high bounties on their heads, revealing an extremely dangerous atmosphere. These are soldiers brought by Bai Ye from the New World, and their aura is naturally different from the soldiers in Rog Town. It is no exaggeration to say that any ordinary soldier under Bai Ye's command can easily defeat more than 20 Rog Town soldiers. This is the difference between the soldiers of the headquarters and the soldiers of the branch. After all, the gap in strength between the pirates faced by the two sides was really too big. Luffy, who passed through God tier, didn't care at all that he was surrounded by marine soldiers. He looked at Byakuya carefully and asked curiously. Brother, have we met before? Why do I feel that you look very familiar? Bai Ye chuckled and said, of course it looks familiar. Didn't you come to Rog Town just to find me? As soon as Byakuya said these words, no matter how nervous Luffy was, he could realize that the guy in front of him was the marine general he was looking for, Byakuya. Usopp, who was being held by Bai Ye, turned back to Luffy with difficulty, showed a smile that was uglier than crying, and said intermittently. Luffy, I told you that I would die when I saw Byakuya, but you still didn't believe it, and now I'm really dead. After saying this, Usopp rolled his eyes and fainted. Bai Ye couldn't help but smile when he saw Usopp pretending to be dead. This was exactly the same as the character in the original work. Luffy shouted directly at Byakuya, it turns out it's because of you that I was beaten so many times by my grandfather. I will definitely beat you up today. Byakuya didn't take Luffy's provocation seriously at all, but instead focused on Nami, who was hiding not far away, looking pitiful. Bai Ye said to Nami, I'll take care of you later. Single quote. After Nami understood Bai Ye's meaning, she was both happy and scared. Fortunately, Bai Ye has not forgotten him, but what he is afraid of is how Bai Ye will treat his group now that he is a pirate. Then, Bai Ye asked Zoro a little strangely, Mihawk, didn't I look for you? Zoro didn't expect that Bai Ye would ask him questions, and the person he asked was Mihawk, the former world's best swordsman. Zoro said coolly, why is Mihawk looking for me? My current target is you, not him. As long as I defeat you, I can become the world's best swordsman and fulfill my agreement with her. Hey, that's strange. Didn't Mihawk follow my advice and take Zoro as his apprentice? But Bai Ye didn't know that Mihawk didn't follow his advice. Instead, he mistook the three-sword style Zoro he said as the three-sword style, Lu Zoro. Even though he couldn't even remember his name, Mihawk searched hard in the East China Sea for a long time, but he could never find Lu Zoro. Mihawk even thought that Bai Ye was deceiving him. There was no swordsman named Sandao, Lu Zoro in the East China Sea. Luffy saw Byakuya talking to Nami first and then to Zoro, completely ignoring himself, who was the first to initiate the challenge. The combination of old and new grudges suddenly made Luffy unable to bear it any longer, and shouted to Bai Ye, I'm going to give you a good beating today, but don't worry, I won't hurt your life. Bai Ye had no doubts about this statement. Just by looking at the appearance of Colonel Pierce and dozens of marine soldiers, he could see that they only suffered some flesh injuries and were not life-threatening. Otherwise, Byakuya would have taken down Luffy and Zoro long ago. Even if Byakuya was unwilling to kill them, he would only hold back as appropriate if they did not endanger Marine's life in front of him. The time it took Luffy to punch him was enough for Byakuya to kill Luffy 100 times. Byakuya exerted force with his left hand, and Luffy felt an unmatched power spread from his arm, and was pulled directly by Byakuya. Come here. The two long knives in his hands, together with the knife in his mouth, slashed towards Bai Ye. He originally wanted to wait until Luffy defeated Byakuya or was defeated by Byakuya before he would take action against Byakuya. The two long swords in Zoro's hands fanned like fans, blowing out strong winds and stirring up wind and sand on the ground, making his vision blurry for a while. No matter what, Luffy couldn't hurt a single hair of Byakuya. And at this moment, Zoro suddenly raised his head and looked at Bai Ye, with the intention of cutting off everything in his eyes. He moved and appeared in front of Bai Ye in an instant. Looking at the blood stains of Madara left on the ground, Zoro anxiously shouted, Luffy. Two breaking sounds were heard one after another, and the two ordinary long swords in Zoro's hands were broken directly by Shiro Yoruichi's finger. Just one kick had already caused Luffy to suffer such serious injuries. If it happened a few more times, Luffy would probably die in Byakuya's hands. When Luffy was about to approach, Byakuya raised his right foot and stamped on Luffy's chest, only to hear the sound of several bones breaking. 9 mountains and 8 seas, the one who has no self. The secret of the 3 sword styles, the 3,000 worlds. Luffy felt the heartbreaking pain in his chest, spat out a lot of blood, and flew out again faster than when he came in. Bai Ye said calmly, "It seems it's time to educate you for Lieutenant General Garp." "Good for you." Facing Luffy's fist, Byakuya did not dodge, but quickly grabbed Luffy's arms with his left hand. At this time, Luffy was about to fly. Byakuya raised his foot and stepped on Luffy's sole, causing the ground to collapse. Facing Zoro's menacing sword moves, Byakuya just stretched out a finger and didn't even use his armed haki. Crack, click, even the blade of Wado Ikimonji, one of the 21 skills of the Great Knife, is dented a little. Rubber pistol. Seeing this, Zoro cursed in a low voice, "Damn it." Relying on his own eyesight and understanding of swordsmanship, he pointed at the intersection of the 3 swords in a flash. But I didn't expect that Bai Ye's strength was so terrifying. Luffy was like a toy in Bai Ye's hands, with no power to fight back. Thinking of this, Zoro didn't want to wait any longer. He bit Hidao Yiwen in his mouth, held 2 ordinary long swords in his hands, and rushed towards Bai Ye. At this level, you are not as good as Ain and Dasky. But Luffy's full blow was weak and extremely slow in Bai Ye's eyes. Bai Ye pointed his finger again, Zoro's mouth went numb, and the words, "Hidao," flew out and inserted into the ground not far away, and he picked up Zoro. The 2 powerful forces of the Straw Hat Pirates were completely destroyed. Zoro was shocked, and the muscles in his arms bulged. He tried his best but still couldn't push forward an inch. When the distance Luffy flew reached the limit, he flew towards Byakuya again. Bai Ye looked at Zoro curiously. "Do you have to recite the name of the move while biting something?" Although Luffy was kicked out by Bai Ye, his arm was still in Bai Ye's hand. Luffy clenched his fists with both hands as if shooting bullets, breaking through the air and hitting Bai Ye in front of him. Chapter 177 Red Hair Attacks. Advertise here. Even though Byakuya had been careful not to harm Luffy's life when he struck. But this does not mean that after Luffy is beaten by Byakuya, he can still be like the little strong boy from Immune to Death, getting up from the ground again and continuing to attack Byakuya like in the original work. At this time, Luffy could be considered to be extremely injured. He was stepped on by Bai Ye, as if he was being pinned down by a 10,000-meter mountain. Luffy opened his mouth to speak, but several streams of blood spewed out from his mouth, even mixed with some internal organ fragments. But even so, Luffy did not give in, and said with difficulty, "Byakuya, let go of Zoro." And Zoro's mouth was full of blood because of Bai Ye's finger. He was in a state of confusion and almost lost his ability to resist. Bai Ye threw Zoro aside like trash, and the soldiers around him quickly locked Zoro with sea tower stone handcuffs with extremely skillful techniques. Bai Ye smiled and said to Luffy, "Did you see? Because of your recklessness, your partner fell into my hands. Do you know what fate they will face next? I'm here to tell you, they will be imprisoned and pushed into the city." It was a dark place where they would spend the next few decades of their lives until they died of old age. Quote. Luffy heard the chill in Bai Ye's words. He was stunned for a moment, and then his struggle became more intense. Even if he doesn't care that it will make his injuries worse, he still wants to break free from Bai Ye's feet. But after Luffy struggled desperately to no avail, there was a hint of pleading in his words. "Bai Ye, as the captain, they only came to Rog Town following my orders. This matter has nothing to do with them. Just let Zoro and the others go, I'm willing to trade my life for theirs." Bai Ye shook his head and sighed, "No, your background is better than theirs. It was your grandfather who brought me to Marine headquarters from the East China Sea, and your grandfather and my teacher have been friends for many years. If I kill you, how will I see your grandfather again? How should I tell my teacher? So you can't kill. However, they don't have such a deep background as you, they can die." Quote. Luffy's eyes were red, and he clenched his fists tightly. His fingernails scratched his palms, and blood flowed out from the seams of his palms and mixed with the soil on the ground. At this time, the pain in Luffy's heart was far greater than the physical pain, and he said word by word, "Byakuya, can you please let them go for my grandfather's sake?" After Luffy said these words, he seemed to have exhausted all his strength. Growing up, he never thought his grandfather was so great. In Luffy's view, his grandfather is just a smelly old man who hinders him from pursuing his dream at sea. They force him to do things he doesn't want to do all day long, and teach him love at every turn. Sometimes Luffy would even think that it would be better if his grandfather never returned to Windmill Village. But who would have thought that the smelly old man whom he regarded as only nagging and forcing himself would now become his talisman and save his life? And he even used his grandfather's reputation to protect his friends who were in danger because of his recklessness. This huge gap between before and after made Luffy feel extremely uncomfortable. Bai Ye chuckled lightly and pretended to hesitate. "It's not impossible. After all, your grandfather's identity is here, so I have to give him some respect. But are you really sure you want to use your grandfather's identity as a marine hero to protect your fellow pirates? Do you know how much pressure this matter will put on Lieutenant General Garp if word gets out? Luffy was stunned. Even though he was stubborn, Bai Ye had already said this, so how could he not understand? Bai Ye continued, why do you think your grandfather asked you to become a marine? To restrict you from chasing your dreams. Or to restrict your freedom? Let me tell you, it is neither. Your grandfather just wants you to live safely. Do you think the life of a pirate is as beautiful as Shanks tells it? Or do you think Shanks is a good person? Stimulated by a series of events today, Luffy's brain was in chaos and his mood was extremely unstable. But after hearing Shanks' name, Luffy said excitedly, I don't allow you to say that Shanks. For Luffy, Shanks is almost his mentor on the pirate path. And in order to save him, he even lost his left arm. Therefore, Luffy has extremely strong feelings for Shanks. Seeing Luffy's excited look, Bai Ye shook his head and sighed, tisk, 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 I'm quite excited. It seems Shanks has done a lot of harm to people. As he spoke, his feet exerted force again, causing the excited Luffy to vomit a few mouthfuls of blood again, almost belching on the spot. Not far away, Drago watched everything that happened. He watched the whole process of Byakuya beating Luffy seriously and trampling his son under his feet. He also heard the conversation between the two. For some reason, instead of blaming Bai Ye, Dorag felt that everything Bai Ye did was educating Luffy. Let Luffy understand in advance that the true appearance of the sea is cruel. In fact, the reason why Byakuya said these words to Luffy did have such meaning. Reality is not a hot-blooded boy anime. As long as you refuse to admit defeat and persist in your dreams, you will eventually win. Without absolute strength, no matter how hard you try, you will eventually bow to reality. Even Luffy in the original work, if it weren't for his own background, his entire group was destroyed as early as the encounter with Aokiji, there would be no future fifth emperor of the sea. Bai Ye looked at Luffy with a stubborn look on his face, and suddenly came up with an idea. If Luffy's mind could be changed, the world source power obtained should be far more than that obtained by killing Luffy, right? It's not that Bai Ye didn't think of this before, but at that time he was in urgent need of world source power. With Luffy's stubbornness, I don't know how much time it will take to correct it. And Byakuya himself has something to do. He doesn't have time to spend time with Luffy, so he should just do it to death. But it's different now. Bai Ye has plenty of time to educate Luffy slowly. However, while Bai Ye was thinking about it, he suddenly felt two extremely strong oars coming towards Rog Town. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and murmured. I didn't expect that there were so many people here today. Bai Ye raised his eyes and looked at the sea not far away. A small boat shaped like a coffin board was gradually approaching Rog Town. On the other side, the red-haired pirates also continued to approach Rog Town. The reason why Mihawk came to Rogue Town is very simple. After hearing that Bai Ye arrived in Rogue Town, I want to ask Bai Ye if the so-called swordsman genius, Sandao, Lu Zoro, really exists. If it really existed, then how could he search for it for so long without finding it or even hearing about it? The reason why the red-haired pirates appeared here is even simpler, because they followed Bai Ye almost all the way to the East China Sea. When Shanks realized that Bai Ye might be the one who disrupted the situation in the sea, he focused all his attention on Bai Ye. And they used the same method they had used to monitor Garp for many years to monitor Bai Ye, wanting to know Bai Ye's every move. However, when Shanks knew that Luffy rushed to Rog Town to take revenge on Byakuya, he was instantly dumbfounded. Isn't this just sending him to death? Captain Roger wasn't so aggressive back then. And it's not good for you to give it to someone, why don't you give it to Bai Ye? If anyone else might let you go for Lieutenant General Garp's sake. But with Byakuya's murderous character, if he really wanted to kill Luffy, wouldn't his left arm be in vain? Isn't half the happiness of my life wasted in vain? In desperation, Shanks had no choice but to appear in front of Byakuya, wanting to save Luffy. As the distance got closer, the residents of Rog Town also discovered two groups of unusual guys. Along with the exclamations, someone said in fear, isn't that the former world's best swordsman Mihawk and the red-haired pirate group, one of the four emperors? How come they are here? Someone wondered, could he be here to seek revenge from General Bai Ye? Not to mention, as soon as this statement came out, everyone felt that it was very reasonable. After all, Mihawk was defeated by Bai Ye and lost his title as the world's best swordsman. It was reasonable to come back to trouble Bai Ye now that he was recovering from his injuries. Although there seems to be no conflict between the red-haired pirates and Byakuya, there have always been some minor frictions between the two. Moreover, red-haired, Shanks and Mihawk have been friends for many years. When they appear together, the meaning is self-evident. Now the residents of Rogue Town were panicking. Mihawk and the red-haired pirates combined were quite a terrifying force. It is no exaggeration to say that even the Whitebeard pirates, the strongest among the four Emperor's pirates, would be defeated under such circumstances. What's more, Bai Ye, who has just become the fourth general, is absolutely certain to lose. The most important thing is that for them, a battle of this level is like a fight between gods and mortals will suffer. After the battle, not to mention Rog Town, I am afraid that even the entire island will not be able to be saved. The residents at the pier did not dare to continue watching the show, and quickly packed up their things and ran to the other side of the island. He was afraid that the next battle would involve him. Seeing this, Bai Ye asked his soldiers to take away the injured soldiers, while the rest were responsible for evacuating the crowd to avoid a stampede. The soldier asked Bai Ye for instructions. General Bai Ye, do you want to bring these pirates over too? Bai Ye hesitated for a moment and said, no, just leave them here. Yes. The soldiers began to evacuate the crowd in an orderly manner according to Bai Ye's order. Byakuya, on the other hand, stood alone at the dock, waiting quietly, wanting to see what Mihawk and the red-haired pirates wanted to do. Dorag did not leave when he saw this. If Mihawk and the red-haired pirates really took action against Byakuya, even if the identity of Bai Ye and the revolutionary army is exposed, Bai Ye must be rescued. For a time, so many big figures gathered in the small town of Rog. Chapter 178 Sowing Discord. Advertise here. Hey, what kind of day is it today to bring so many big shots to this little Rog town? Bai Ye squinted his eyes and looked at Mihawk and Shanks, and said in a slightly teasing tone. From Bai Ye's words, you can't hear a trace of timidity or fear. Those who didn't know better thought that Mihawk and the red-haired pirates were surrounded by white Yoruichi people. At a glance, Shanks saw Luffy being stepped on by Byakuya and seriously injured. He pointed at Byakuya and yelled, Byakuya, let me go. Faced with Shanks' threat, Bai Ye not only did not let go, but directly picked up Usopp, who was pretending to be unconscious. Bai Ye ignored Shanks and instead asked Jesus Bu, who was slightly nervous behind Shanks, Jesus Bu, does this face look familiar to you? Byakuya turned Usopp facing the red-haired pirates. When Jesus saw Usopp's face that was almost completely similar to his own, and his long nose that was exactly the same as his wife's, he became excited instantly. When Jesus vaguely saw Usopp's profile just now, he felt that Usopp was somewhat similar to himself. Now that he could see the front completely, he was almost 100% sure that the young man in Bai Ye's hand was his son. When Usopp, who was pretending to be unconscious, heard Bai Ye calling out his father's name, he couldn't help but secretly opened his eyes, just in time to look at Jesus Bu. Looking at the face that was the same as his own, Usopp murmured with shock in his eyes, Dad. Dad. Bai, put Usopp down for me. The emotion shown by Jesus Bu was far more excited than Shangus. In an instant, a flintlock gun appeared in Jesus Bu's hand and was aimed at Bai Ye's head. Bai Ye could feel a force of energy locked on his temples. Sure enough, everyone in the red-haired pirate group is not weak in strength. Usopp looked at his father's excited look and couldn't help but feel a little moved in his heart. However, as Bai Ye exerted force on his palm, the feeling in his heart disappeared instantly. Bai Ye sneered, what? You know how anxious you are now. When you abandoned your family and children and chose to go to sea to pursue your dreams. Why didn't you think that your wife would die of illness because there was no one to take care of you, and that your son would end up like this? As soon as Bai Ye said this, almost everyone present understood the relationship between Usopp and Jesus Bu. But they didn't expect Bai Ye to know so many secret things. Usopp's face turned purple due to difficulty breathing, and it seemed that he might die at Bai Ye's hands at any time. Jesus Bu was anxious in his heart but did not dare to take action. He knew that with Bai Ye's strength, he could easily kill Usopp the moment he took action. And Jesus Bu also understood that although his own strength was considered one of the few strong ones in the New World, but for the general level Bai Ye, he can only be regarded as a slight threat. If you want to save Usopp from Byakuya, you can only rely on Captain Shanks and Vice Captain Ben Beckman. Jesus knew this, and Shanks and Ben Beckman knew it even better. Everyone has been together for so many years, but they can't watch Jesus' only son die in front of their eyes. Shanks said to Bai Ye with a complicated expression, there is no need for the matters between you and me to involve the younger generation, right? Don't you feel ashamed to do such a thing as Marine General? Younger generation. Bai Ye sneered, I don't think I'm a few years older than them, right? Shanks remained silent, considering the series of things Bai Ye had done in the New World, coupled with his general level strength. Almost everyone ignored his age. But in fact, Byakuya, who is about to turn 20 and belongs to the latest era of Marine, has become a Marine General. Even the four emperors, who are 2 or 3 times older than Bai Ye, unknowingly view Bai Ye from the perspective of equal status. And do you really think that I said this to save myself? Bai Ye showed a weird smile and said jokingly. Shanks, now I want you to make a choice. Only one of Luffy and Usopp can survive. Who do you choose to save? As a friendly reminder, if you and Ben Beckman choose to attack directly, I will kill both of them at the same time. Don't test my bottom line. At this time, Bai Ye was like a demon who played with human nature in the eyes of everyone, and his actions were completely inconsistent with the marine uniform he was wearing. After saying that, Bai Ye ignored Shanks and Jesus Bu, who had extremely complicated expressions, but focused his attention on Mihawk, who was standing aside. Bai Ye asked unceremoniously, Mihawk, are you here to cause trouble too? Mihawk was silent for a moment and said, I did not find the swordsman genius you mentioned in the East China Sea, Sandao, Lu Zoro. Santo Ryu Zoro. Bai Ye glanced at Zoro, who was in a semi-conscious state at his feet, and gestured, isn't this it? I was still wondering how he appeared in front of me. Mihawk looked at Zoro, whose face was covered with blood, frowned and said, is he Zoro Lu? Bai Ye was confused by Mihawk, and said in confusion, what Zoro? His name is Zoro. This time it was Mihawk's turn to be confused, then. Santo Ryu. Quote. Bai Ye was speechless. Now he finally understood why Mihawk didn't find Zoro in the East China Sea. But now he didn't have the intention to explain too much to Mihawk, so he kicked Zoro to Mihawk. When he wakes up, you will understand by asking him yourself. I saw the word, Wado, stuck in the ground shaking violently, breaking free from the ground and flying into Bai Ye's hand. Although Wado Yimanji is a good knife, its effect on Bai Ye is far less than Feng Ming. Moreover, Wado Ikimonji's sword still has the fingerprints left by Bai Ye and needs to be repaired. Otherwise, it will be damaged soon if it encounters a fierce battle. Therefore, Byakuya threw Hidao Yiwen to Mihawk and said calmly, this sword belongs to Zoro, so I'll leave it to you. Remember our bet, don't let me see you for 2 years. Otherwise, you will definitely die. Quote. With a flash of shocking murderous intention, after Mihawk caught Zoro. When he reached out to catch Wado Ikimonji, he felt the terrifying force wrapped in the sword, making his entire right arm start to feel numb. And these forces act on the ship as Mihawk's arms. The Mihawk coffin board-shaped boat disappeared from everyone's sight at an extremely fast speed like a fired cannonball. In response, Mihawk did not offer any resistance and allowed the ship to leave in the opposite direction. Mihawk knew that the word, harmony, thrown out was Bai Ye's warning to him. If he had participated in this matter today, I'm afraid he would have been killed on the spot by Bai Ye. After fighting against Bai Ye, Mihawk had no doubt whether Bai Ye had the strength. Of course, this does not mean that Mihawk chose to leave because he was afraid of Bai Ye. The most important thing was the bet he made with Bai Ye. Mihawk has an arrogant personality and is unwilling to break the promises he has made. This has always been his code of conduct. And Byakuya also helped him find Zoro, which made him owe Yoruichi a favor. Calculating it this way, Mihawk has no reason to take action against Bai Ye, both emotionally and rationally. As for the dispute between Bai Ye and his longtime friend Shanks, Mihawk can only do nothing to help them. Therefore, there is no use for Mihawk to stay any longer. He might as well just take advantage of Bai Ye's warning and leave. Mihawk left in a way that no one expected. From Mihawk's attitude towards Bai Ye, Shanks and others can clearly detect the pressure Bai Ye puts on Mihawk. After finishing dealing with Zoro and Mihawk, Bai Ye turned his attention to Shanks and Jesus Bu and asked, have you made a choice after thinking for so long? Make a choice. How to make the right choice. On one side is the son of a partner who has been sailing together for many years and has become a close friend by fate. On one side is Luffy, who believes that he can inherit the captain's will and has spent a huge price to gain recognition. For Shanks, no matter which one he chooses, it will have far-reaching and irreversible consequences. Jesus knew what Luffy meant to Shanks, but when it came to the life of his son, whom he had owed for many years, he could not say the words to make Shanks choose Luffy no matter what. At this time, Usopp was almost in a coma due to suffocation. If they didn't make a choice, they might not have the chance to make a choice next. However, at this moment, Luffy at Byakuya's feet vomited blood and said extremely weakly, Shanks, save Usopp, don't worry about me. As long as my grandfather is here, Bai Ye won't dare to kill me. Quote. Listening to Luffy's words, Shanks' eyes flashed with determination, and he seemed to have made a decision. Bai Ye silently stepped on Luffy harder and sighed, oh, you really used Lieutenant General Garp to suppress me. To be honest, even if Lieutenant General Garp comes in person, if you make me angry, I will kill you without mercy. Do you really think that Lieutenant General Garp can be your lifelong talisman? If it weren't for Byakuya not using armament hockey, and Luffy happens to be a rubber fruit user, he also has the vitality of Xiaoqiang. Even if Luffy hadn't been kicked to death by Byakuya, he would be trampled to death by Byakuya now. Seeing Bai Ye's actions, Shanks shouted quickly, Bai Ye, stop. I made a choice. When Shanks was about to make his decision, in addition to Usopp's father, Jesus, who was extremely nervous, Luffy's father, Drago, was also extremely nervous in midair. In fact, Drago had the idea of rescuing Luffy from Bai Ye's feet long before. But before he could take action, he saw Luffy being stepped on even harder by Byakuya after saying those words. At this moment, Dorag was stunned. He didn't know whether Byakuya's move was a warning to Luffy not to talk nonsense, a warning to Shanks to make a decision as soon as possible, or a warning to himself not to take action. There may be only one or two, but it may be all three. Although Delog and Bai Ye had a great conversation that night, Delog was suddenly enlightened by many of Bai Ye's suggestions. The effect of the heart of justice also made Delog very excited. But if you want Dorag to unconditionally believe that Bai Ye is sincerely helping the Revolutionary Army because of these things, then you can only say that you are too naive in thinking about Delog. Dorag started from scratch and gradually developed the Revolutionary Army from scratch to the current situation, becoming a serious problem for the world government. How can such a heroic figure be simple? The reason why Delog appeared to have a happy conversation with Bai Ye was because Bai Ye showed his identity and took the lead in showing his sincerity. Moreover, everything Bai Ye said and did was beneficial to the Revolutionary Army. On this basis, Dorag showed such enthusiasm for Bai Ye, calling Bai Ye the spiritual mentor of the Revolutionary Army, and his status was even equal to that of him, the leader of the Revolutionary Army. But in fact, Bai Ye didn't even have the slightest command authority over the Revolutionary Army. It was equivalent to Dorag writing a blank check to Bai Ye, asking Bai Ye to give him advice and provide him with a heart of justice. And are the side effects of heart of justice really what Bai Ye said? This question also drew a big question mark in Dolag's mind. After returning to the Revolutionary Army, Dorag will order people to conduct a detailed study of the heart of justice, and then find a disabled but determined Revolutionary Army soldier to enslave him. This is used to verify the role of the heart of justice. Dorag has a plan to deal with all this. Only the sudden appearance of Luffy made Drago panic for a moment and didn't know what to do. At this time, Shanks expressed his choice: you let Luffy go. Hearing Shanks' choice, Drago couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Luffy's life was finally saved. But the eyes of Jesus behind Shanks quickly dimmed, and a look of regret flashed across his face. Ben Beckman walked towards Jesus Bu and comforted in a low voice, "You know what Luffy means to the captain and to this era." For this reason, the captain even pressed his entire left arm on Luffy. So Luffy's life must be saved. "I'm really sorry. I hope you can understand the captain's decision." Quote. Although this move seemed to be a comfort, at this critical moment, it seemed a bit intriguing. And Jesus Bu seemed to really understand Ben Beckman's words, nodding silently. When Bai Ye saw this, he showed a successful smile. The red-haired pirates, known as the Iron Wall Pirates, had a conspicuous loophole from today on. Bai Ye said calmly, "Since you choose Luffy, then I will hand over Usopp to you." With that said, Bai Ye threw his left hand and threw Usopp in the direction of Shanks. Usopp let out a horrific cry in the air. Shanks felt Bai Ye's conqueror's domineering power. A gleam flashed in his eyes, and he said silently, "Interesting, it's really interesting." However, Bai Ye's joy did not last long. Luffy, whom he had placed a lot of emphasis on, was now in Bai Ye's hands, and after what had just happened, Jesus Bu might be a little dissatisfied with himself. "I'm afraid that Guy Byakuya will jump over the wall and kill Luffy." This can be seen throughout the Marine headquarters. Except for Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku, the three generals of Marine and even Garp have not awakened Conqueror's Haki. But now Bai Ye has actually achieved this, which makes people wonder what kind of mentality Bai Ye has in Marine. He also raised Conqueror's Haki to a level that is difficult for ordinary awakened people to reach at an extremely fast speed. But if we just retreat, maybe as Luffy said, Byakuya will let Luffy live because of Garp. Quote. It seems that my worry is right. If the five old guys know about this matter, they will probably be restless and think of ways to get rid of Bai Ye, right? Although he is a Marine, he possesses the qualifications of a king, and has awakened Conqueror's Haki. Shanks looked at Usopp flying over and couldn't hold back the anger in his heart anymore. Conqueror's domineering power surged out. You must know that the last time the red-haired pirates fought against Byakuya, Byakuya had not yet awakened Conqueror's Haki. But in less than a month, Byakuya not only awakened Conqueror's Haki. Appear in front of yourself from time to time, give yourself experience, and save the world's energy. Although anyone with a discerning eye can feel that Bai Ye's Conqueror's domineering power is far inferior to Shanks, they were equally shocked by Bai Ye's Conqueror's domineering power. A strong coercion also rose up on Bai Ye's body, rushing towards Shanks. For a time, the whole situation in Rog Town changed, as if a natural disaster was coming, which made people feel uneasy. Shanks also felt helpless after listening to Ben Beckman's advice. I don't know if I will do anything to harm the red-haired pirates in the future. Shanks's thoughts are not unfounded. After all, Marine must obey the orders of the world government and the celestial dragons at all times. This talent is beyond their imagination. And the initiator of all this is Bai Ye, who seems to be innocent, but is actually evil. What's more, he took the initiative to deliver it to his door. The ending is now far beyond Shanks' control. In this case, wouldn't it be possible to gain experience again? Bai Ye is getting more and more happy the more he looks at Shanks now. Isn't this the experience baby who has always been by his side? Such a good person is hard to find even with a lantern. Byakuya was overjoyed when she saw Shanks unleashing Conqueror's domineering energy. But Bai Ye didn't care so much. The experience gained from releasing Conqueror's Haki for confrontation was several times more efficient than the previous concealment. This shows how difficult it is for Marine to awaken Conqueror's Haki. Bai Ye, you, and Jesus Bu also didn't expect that Bai Ye would actually throw his son over. He was overjoyed and jumped to catch Usopp. At this moment, Shanks suddenly felt an unprecedented murderous intention in his heart. This was the first time he wanted to get rid of someone so much. These are all things that make Shanks feel very anxious. Ben Beckman asked Shanks, Captain, Luffy is still in Byakuya's hands. If we take action. Under such circumstances, Marine and pirates both have the qualifications to be kings. Of the two, it is definitely the free pirate who can awaken Conqueror's Haki. Chapter 179 Disabled Brother. Advertise here. At this moment, Shanks has reached an impasse. No matter how much Shanks wanted to get rid of Byakuya, in order to save Luffy's life, he could only suppress the murderous intention in his heart. Shanks took back Conqueror's domineering attitude, turned around and ordered, let's go. At this time, Shanks has made up his mind, regardless of whether the world government has made corresponding countermeasures to solve Bai Ye. As long as he meets Bai Ye again, he will definitely deal with Bai Ye himself. Seeing Shanks choose to retreat in midair, Dorag subconsciously breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Shanks no longer forces Bai Ye, given his relationship with the old man, Bai Ye probably won't kill Luffy. In other words, although Luffy was seriously injured, his life was saved. It can be regarded as an unforgettable lesson for Luffy. DeLog felt relieved, but when Bai Ye saw Shanks taking back his conqueror's domineering attitude and preparing to leave, he immediately became unhappy. My conqueror's domineering level hasn't been raised yet. Why did you just leave? How can there be so many good things if you just want to run away after pretending to be cool? Feng Ming's sword came out, Bai Ye raised his hand, and a magnificent light blue slash swept out, and the distance of several hundred meters disappeared in an instant. The speed was far beyond Shanks and others' expectations. If they let this slash fall, the entire ship will be split into two. Bai Ye, are you looking for death? Shanks, who was already extremely angry, let out a low drink, pulled out the griffin from his waist, turned around and blocked Bai Ye's slash with his sword. Griffin's sword was wrapped with purple-black conqueror's domineering energy, and countless dark purple thunder and lightning splashed out, causing waves in the void. Before the light blue slash touched the sword, it was constantly being worn away by the extremely powerful conqueror's haki. The burst of air waves caused the sea to set off huge waves, rushing in all directions. The residents hiding in the distance were always observing the movements on the dock. When they saw Bai Ye forcing back the red-haired pirates, their anxious hearts dropped into their stomachs. As long as there is no fight, their lives will not be affected. But what they never expected was that after the red-haired pirate group, whose strength was significantly higher than Byakuya's, chose to evacuate. General Bai Ye, who was at a disadvantage in terms of strength, chose to attack without mercy. He seemed to be saying, if you don't kill me, you won't be able to leave. Now, just the waves caused by the aftermath of the fight between the two were enough to smash a third of Rog Town into pieces. If the battle officially starts later, the entire island will probably sink. At this moment, countless people were complaining in their hearts that Bai Ye's behavior was irrational and did not take their lives into consideration. Facing the thousands of meters of waves sweeping in, Bai Ye jumped from the pier, and the wind in his hand slashed towards the waves in front of him. The terrifying sword pressure carried by this sword directly dispersed the monstrous waves. It rained heavily under a clear sky, and through the refraction of the sunlight, you could even see a gorgeous colorful rainbow. But at this critical moment, no one appreciates such beautiful scenery. Everyone's attention was on Bai Ye and Shanks. Bai Ye rushed straight towards Shanks with his sword. The purpose of the slash just now was to keep Shanks and others. Bai Yeshao asked, do you want to leave without leaving anything behind? Shanks said domineeringly, if you don't want me to leave, just keep your life. Bai Ye's slash just now gave Shanks a general idea of Bai Ye's strength. As expected of the sword god, Byakuya who can defeat Mihawk, he is indeed not an easy guy to deal with. But in Shanks' view, although Bai Ye's strength is not weak, it can only reach a point where he is 50-50 equal to himself at most, or even slightly weaker. Coupled with Ben Beckman who was skimming the formation, Shanks couldn't imagine the possibility of losing. Bai Ye's actions were no different from seeking death. Ben Beckman, who was on the side, turned his attention to the dying Luffy at this moment. Taking advantage of Byakuya's fight with Shanks, the possibility of rescuing Luffy is very high. At that time, I will team up with Shanks to solve Bai Ye's serious problem. In this case, the sea will develop as they expected. After making up his mind, Ben Beckman carefully watched the battle between Bai Ye and Shanks, looking for the most suitable opportunity to take action. The figures of Bai Ye and Shanks intertwined, and the sound of the swords clashing was endless, and the airwaves generated almost scattered all the clouds within a radius of thousands of miles. Even Dorag, who was hiding in the air and observing secretly, was almost exposed by the aftermath of the fight between the two. Shanks is the third pirate king that Byakuya fights against, and his method of attack is very different from the previous two pirate kings. After all, Shanks is the only pirate king who has not taken devil fruits. His ability to reach the top of the sea relies on his swordsmanship, which is almost as good as Mihawk's, and his conqueror's domineering power that surpasses ordinary people. If Garp is the man who has used the armament's haki to the extreme, then Shanks is the man who has used the conqueror's haki to the extreme. Although armed color haki and conqueror's haki are both three-color haki, the latter's limit is much stronger than the former. To put it simply, if the attack increase of armed color haki is between 1.1 and 1.6, then the attack increase of conqueror's haki is between 1.5 and 2. Don't underestimate this increase of up to 0.4 times. For top-level battles like generals and 4 emperors, a single mistake can affect the entire battle. Not to mention the 0.4 times increase in strength. Bai Ye could clearly feel this during the fight. Even if his armor-colored haki has reached the full level, it is still much weaker than the shank-colored conqueror's haki. Garp, who lacked conqueror's dominance, was able to chase Roger across the ocean. This made Bai Ye have to wonder whether Garp's armed domination was the same as his own swordsmanship and telekinesis, breaking through the original boundaries and reaching a higher level. Otherwise, it is really impossible to explain why Garp can compete with Roger. Of course, it is unimaginable to cultivate conqueror's haki beyond the level of armament haki. Looking across the entire sea, there are very few people who have awakened conqueror's domineering power. Among all those who have mastered Conqueror's Haki, there are only a handful of people who have cultivated Conqueror's Haki to the highest level. There are only a few people who are reflected in the original work, less than one hand. This further demonstrates how terrifying Shanks' talent for Conqueror's Haki is. This discovery undoubtedly made Bai Ye more curious about Conqueror's Haki. Take advantage of the fight with Shanks to hone your Conqueror's dominance like crazy. The longer the two of them fought, the more Shanks felt something was wrong. Bai Ye seemed to be at a disadvantage under his own offensive, but that was only in appearance. Until now, he had not caused any harm to Bai Ye. On the contrary, Bai Ye's seemingly endless physical strength and extremely strong swordsmanship caused him a lot of trouble. The sword light kept attacking his weak points like a nimble loach. If it weren't for the extremely powerful Conqueror's Haki, Shanks might have been defeated first. During the fight, Shanks and Ben Beckman looked at each other, and a look of understanding flashed in Shanks's eyes. Bawe! Shanks shouted low, and the Conqueror's domineering energy wrapped around the Griffin's sword instantly condensed into a small dark purple ball, and suddenly attacked Bai Ye. Countless thunder and lightning are swimming around the dark purple ball. Although it doesn't look big, the power contained in it is enough to destroy a town. Just when Byakuya's attention was attracted by the ball, Ben Beckman, who was not far away, rushed directly towards Luffy, trying to abduct Luffy before Byakuya could react. Seeing this situation, Bai Ye couldn't help but frown. The strength in his hand subconsciously increased a little, and he swung his sword with the light blue sword energy formed by the terrifying force. Directly and quietly destroy the dark purple ball. The remaining sword energy remained unabated and struck directly at Shanks, whose face was filled with shock. The speed was so fast that Shanks had no choice but to hold Griffin across his chest, trying to block Bai Ye's sword. In Shanks' view, although this sword energy defeated the power contained in it must be greatly reduced. All he had to do was block this sword energy and entangle Byakuya for a moment, which would be enough for Ben Beckman to take back Luffy. But when the sword energy reached his body, Shanks realized how naive his thoughts were. The sword body wrapped around Conqueror's domineering spirit was directly hit into a shape by the sword energy, making a sharp and harsh sound. The tiny, sharp sword energy splashed all over the sword energy, breaking several cracks in Shanks' clothes. If Shanks hadn't used Conqueror's Haki in time, I'm afraid there are countless small wounds on his body at this time. The curved sword blade hit Shanks in the chest, making Shanks feel as if he had been punched by Kaido. His throat felt sweet and he retreated hundreds of meters away. After repelling Shanks, Bai Ye was a little bit in the air and attacked directly towards Ben Beckman. Ben Beckman didn't expect Bai Ye to get rid of Shanks so quickly. Reacting very quickly, he pulled out a half-meter-long flintlock gun from his waist, and locked onto Bai Ye, who was moving at high speed with his aura of knowledge. A blazing flame burst out from the muzzle. Driven by the domineering force of the armed color, the jet-black bullet broke through the layers of air waves, emitted a piercing scream, and shot towards Bai Ye's temple. Bai Ye's wisdom Seba is also at full level, facing the bullets that are coming. Bai Ye turned slightly to one side with a reaction speed that was beyond ordinary people's. The bullet passed by the tip of his nose. He could even smell the faint burnt smell on the bullet due to the speed. However, what Bai Ye didn't expect was that the bullet Ben Yin shot behind him suddenly turned around in the air and shot toward his temple again. What the hell? Gunfighting. Although Bai Ye was a little surprised, he reacted very quickly and slashed down with his sword, directly splitting the high-speed bullet into two. The broken bullet shot into the sea, and a violent explosion suddenly broke out, causing two towering water columns to rise from the sea, spraying seawater around like a fountain. Seeing this situation, Bai Ye secretly thought to himself that they were indeed a group of Iron Wall pirates with two emperors, and Ben Beckman's strength was definitely no less than Shanks. This made Byakuya even more curious about how powerful the Whitebeard pirates, who were ranked first among the four emperors' pirates, could suppress the red-haired pirates. In other words, how powerful Whitebeard, who is known as the strongest man in the sea, is. But now is not the time to think about these issues. Bai Ye's main purpose now is to prevent Ben Beckman from taking Luffy. Ben Beckman did not expect that his sudden shot would not have any impact on Bai Ye. Bai Ye suddenly appeared in front of Ben Beckman and said coldly, "I hope your melee skills are as superb as your marksmanship. Otherwise, starting from today, the red-haired pirates will lose a vice captain." Quote. The White Knight approached Ben Beckman, and the wind in his hand was like an antelope hanging its horns, thrust out from an extremely weird angle. As an emperor-level powerhouse like Shanks, Ben Beckman's marksmanship is unique in the sea. His close combat skills are also not weak. The half-meter-long flintlock in his hand serves as a dagger to resist. Dang, dang, dang. The Fengming slash, comparable to the supreme sharp sword, only left a white mark on the flintlock gun. Think about it, if this flintlock gun breaks into pieces at a touch, how can it be used as Ben Beckman's sidearm? Ben Beckman brought his eroticism to the extreme, with a slight sweat stain on his forehead. In his perception, Bai Ye's movements seemed to be slowed down several times, making it easier for him to avoid or block. However, his melee combat skills can be called a strong one on the sea, but compared with the same level strong men like Bai Ye who specialize in melee combat, they are far behind. In an instant, the two exchanged several moves. Ben Beckman tried to distance himself, but was tightly entangled by Bai Ye and could not escape at all. Ben Beckman seemed tired of resisting, so he had to activate his domineering power to the extreme, waiting for Shanks to join forces to repel Bai Ye. Bai Ye's strength was far beyond their expectations. At this time, Ben Beckman had no hope of killing Bai Ye in Rog Town. This sword must be slashed to the left. Ben Beckman noticed Bai Ye's movements slowing down several times, and he held the flintlock gun in his right hand and swung it to the left, trying to block Bai Ye's attack. But what happened next made Ben Beckman break into a cold sweat. I saw that the long sword that was supposed to be slashing to the left suddenly appeared on the unprepared right side and slashed towards the right hand holding the gun. Ben Beckman, who had always revealed a temperament of wisdom and always had a calm expression, now let out a shrill scream, showing a painful and ferocious look. Beckman, Vice Captain. Under the exclamation of everyone in the red-haired pirate group, Ben Beckman's right arm holding the gun was cut off by the white Yoruichi sword and fell into the sea, where he did not know which lucky Poseidon-like creature would eat him. Bai Ye looked at Ben Beckman's vacant right arm and chuckled. Shanks broke off his left arm, you broke off your right arm, and now you two can help each other to create complete happiness. Shanks, who came in a hurry, happened to see Ben Beckman's arm cut off by Bai Ye. His anger instantly occupied his entire brain. He carried Griffin and shouted, Bai Ye, I will definitely kill you today. After losing his right arm and gun, Ben Beckman's combat power was almost doubled. Bai Ye raised his foot and put it on the chest of Ben Beckman, who was in a sluggish state, making Ben Beckman fall into the sea like a meteor. Hateful. In order to save Ben Beckman, Shanks had to turn around and fly towards Ben Beckman. At this time, Bai Ye was hesitating whether to wipe out the red-haired pirates in Rog Town. Although he injured Shanks and cut off Ben Beckman's arm all by himself, it is easy for people to doubt his own strength. But Bai Ye did this in one-on-one situations. Shanks and Ben Beckman did not join forces to fight against each other. Apart from Bai Ye, there is also Whitebeard who can achieve this on the sea. So Bai Ye is not worried about the strength he has shown so far. But if the red-haired pirates were killed here, the strength displayed would be a bit too strong. However, Bai Ye made a decision immediately after thinking for a few seconds. Kill. Now the hatred between the two parties can no longer be resolved. Instead of letting them leave and letting the red-haired pirates secretly set up a trap behind their backs, it would be better to just kill them all. As for the future, let's wait until later. Anyway, Bai Ye now has the strength to flip the table at any time, so at worst he won't play with them anymore. After making up his mind, Bai Ye raised his sword and rushed directly towards Shanks, who had just caught Ben Beckman, with strong killing intent erupting from his body. Shanks, don't you want to kill me? Let's see who can leave Rogue Town alive today. Court death. The Conqueror's domineering energy exuding from Shanks is almost solidified, even if it is the pirate supernova with a bounty of hundreds of millions of belly. Anyone who walks within 100 meters of Shanks will probably be stunned by this terrifying Kamui. When Shanks stabilized Ben Beckman and prepared to take action, he was held back by Ben Beckman with his remaining left arm. At this time, Ben Beckman had returned to his usual calm demeanor, and his words revealed some intention of retreating. Don't take action again. Bai Ye's strength is not something you can deal with even if you are injured. I'm afraid this guy's strength is enough to compare with Whitebeard. Quote. Damn it, we should attack together. With the strength of the two of us, we could definitely take down Bai Ye easily. But now that we have been defeated one by Bai Ye, we have fallen into such an embarrassing situation. Quote. Shanks looked at Ben Beckman's empty right arm and continued angrily, but Bai Ye is obviously determined to fight. Even if we don't want to take action, this guy will still cling to him. I have a way. Let's launch an attack on Rog Town at the same time. As a marine general, Bai Ye will definitely not watch us destroy Rog Town. Let's take advantage of this opportunity to leave the East China Sea quickly. Ben Beckman's suggestion can indeed bring great hope of escape to the red-haired pirates. Shanks was a little confused, but Luffy is also in Rog Town. If we attack. Ben Beckman interrupted, don't worry, Byakuya won't let Luffy die. Shanks is not an indecisive person, and when he was in danger several times in the past, he also followed Ben Beckman's advice and escaped. Ben Beckman took out a small sterling silver pocket gun from his arms. There was only one special bullet in it, but it was powerful enough to destroy the entire island. Ben Beckman pointed his gun in the direction of Rog Town and shouted, do it. Bang! A silver-white bullet escaped across the sky, leaving a faint white mark in midair. Bai Ye thought the shot was aimed at him, and just as he was about to block it, he found that the bullet had bypassed him. And Shanks once again gathered his power. This time the purple-black ball was smaller in size than last time, but its speed was several times faster. As Bai Ye expected, the purple-black ball and the silver-white bullet also avoided him and shot towards Rog Town behind him. Bai Ye instantly understood what Shanks and Ben Beckman meant. Are they forcing Bai Ye to make a choice, whether to abandon the entire Rog Town and kill them, or choose to give up chasing them in order to save Rog Town? F***K, pirates are indeed pirates. No matter how loyal and easygoing they appear, that's just what they want to show. The next time I see you, the red-haired pirates will be destroyed. After Bai Ye left these words, he turned around and galloped towards Rog Town. Although he was not a saint or a good person, he did not want tens of thousands of innocent people in Rog Town to die because of him. Perhaps at this time, Only a Kainu can choose to kill the red-haired pirates regardless of the lives of the residents of Rogue Town. I saw that silver-white bullet suddenly exploded over Rogue Town, and hundreds of smaller silver-white bullets were scattered from it. Cluster bombs. Where did Ben Beckman come up with all these bells and whistles? Just as hundreds of bullets and the powerful Bai Ye were about to fall, Bai Ye arrived at the dock of Rogue Town in time. The two palms were entangled by the light red air current, and armed domineering energy spurted out from Bai Ye's palms as if it was free of money. Each falling bullet was wrapped in a light red airflow, which exploded with astonishing power. But with the continuous supply of Bai Ye armed color's domineering energy, the explosion of these bullets did not have any impact on Rogue Town at all. The armed domineering energy released from his right hand tightly entwines the Bai Ye, constantly consuming its power. Under Bai Ye's precise control of the armed hockey, both sides worked simultaneously, and soon all the bullets and Ba were eliminated. At this time, the red-haired pirates had already disappeared. However, Bai Ye didn't feel any pity in his heart. Because the scene just now was witnessed by Luffy, who was seriously injured. Luffy saw that Shanks, whom he regarded as a good guy, chose to attack the innocent residents of Rogue Town in order to escape for his life. But Bai Ye, who was regarded as a bad guy by himself, gave up killing the red-haired pirates in order to save the residents of Rogue Town. This made Luffy fall into unprecedented confusion. At the same time, the residents who were originally hiding saw that the Yoruichi people actually repelled the red-haired pirates and saved their lives in a crisis. Residents came to the street and shouted excitedly, "General Bai Ye, invincible. Thankfully, General Byakuya is here, otherwise, we would all have died at the hands of pirates." Amidst these cheers, Luffy became more and more confused. Chapter 180 Return to Ski Island. Advertise here. When Luffy opened his eyes again, he found himself lying on the bed, with pain and weakness all over his body and being wrapped in dense bandages. Luffy probably guessed that he should be on Marine's ship now. Recalling what happened before he fell into coma, Luffy felt extremely depressed instead of feeling happy about surviving the disaster. The entire Straw Hat Pirates fell apart under his recklessness. Zoro was taken away by Mihawk, the former world's best swordsman. Usopp was taken away by his father who was in the red-haired pirates. Nami and himself should have fallen into the hands of Marine General Byakuya. The most important thing is that what Shanks did was completely different from the pirate life he told himself. In order to escape, he sacrificed tens of thousands of innocent residents in Rogue Town. This kind of thing is unacceptable to Luffy. Luffy looked at the ceiling and thought silently, did Shanks lie to me about the freedom and adventurous life where companions care about each other? Squeak. The door to the room where Luffy was suddenly pushed open. Nami walked in and saw Luffy waking up. He was surprised and said, "Luffy, you're awake." Nami. After seeing his companions, Luffy was not as depressed as before. Luffy quickly asked, "Nami, are you okay? Byakuya didn't do anything to you, right?" Of course, with Luffy's simplicity, he just thinks that Nami is a pirate like himself. He was beaten half to death by Bai Ye. Even if Nami knew Bai Ye, her situation should not be much better than his own. Hearing Luffy's question, Nami's face turned red and he hesitated. No, Byakuya didn't do anything to me." Thinking of what happened that night, Nami's face couldn't help but turn redder. She looked a little restless, as if her buttocks were still burning. Luffy said differently, "Hey, Nami, why are you blushing? Your room is too hot." "Oh, is it so?" Luffy looked at the thick quilt covering himself and thought thoughtfully. Nami was afraid that Luffy would ask more questions, so she quickly changed the subject and asked, "How are you feeling now? Are the injuries on your body feeling better?" Luffy gritted his teeth and reluctantly sat up from the bed. Feeling the pain all over his body, he couldn't help but gasp. Luffy said with some annoyance, that bastard Bai Ye was too cruel. My injuries need to be healed for 2 or 3 days. Moreover, all of us have dispersed, and we don't know when we will be able to meet again." Quote. In fact, it can be heard from Luffy's words that he doesn't seem to hate Byakuya that much. Hearing Luffy's complaint, Nami didn't know what to say, so she could only console him. Look on the bright side, although everyone dispersed, their lives were saved. There will always be a day when we meet. Quote. Nami had already told Byakuya that although Luffy was a pirate, he had not committed any evil deeds against civilians during his voyage. But having said that, it is an indisputable fact that Luffy is a pirate, and he always takes action against the pursuing marine along the way. So Byakuya will not kill Luffy, but he will not let Luffy go so easily. Luffy seemed to have noticed Nami's embarrassment. He held back the pain and showed a big smile, saying, "You are right, we will meet one day in the future. By the way, do you know where we are going now? I heard from Bai Ye that it seemed to be the island where he was born, Sky Island." Nami recalled, it is said that if it hadn't been for Colonel Vaughn on Sky Island, Bai Ye would have died at the hands of pirates long ago. That's why he returned to the East China Sea to visit Colonel Vaughn during his break in accepting the appointment of General. Quote. The island where Byakuya was born. Luffy said silently, and then he suddenly thought of Windmill Village, Ace, Sabo and his hated grandfather. While Luffy was talking to Nami, Byakuya got on the phone with Garp. When Garp answered the phone, the first thing Bai Ye said was, "Your grandson is in my hands now, what are you going to do?" The soldiers around him felt very awkward when they heard Bai Ye's straightforward words. We clearly captured the invading pirates, and it was fair and honorable, as it should be. But from what General Bai Ye said, he felt like a kidnapper who had kidnapped the grandson of Lieutenant General Garp. I heard Garp on the other end of the phone curse and say, how come this grandson doesn't look like his father at all? His father has been hiding for so long without being caught. He was arrested by you less than 2 months after he went to sea. It's so embarrassing to me. Quote. The surrounding soldiers all fell into a daze after hearing Garp's loud reply. Lieutenant General Garp's brain is really unpredictable. He is a marine hero, but his grandson went to sea to become a pirate. You old man doesn't feel embarrassed about this, but feels embarrassed that your grandson was caught by marine. One word, absolutely. In fact, Garp had already thought about such a thing after he learned that Luffy was going to sea and saw Luffy's bounty notice. What if Luffy falls into the hands of marine? It's just that no matter how hard Garp thinks about it, he can't come up with a good solution. So, he simply stopped thinking about it. Anyway, he hasn't been caught yet. But who would have thought that Luffy would fall into Marine's hands so quickly, and it would also fall into Byakuya's hands? Garp can imagine how arrogant Zephyr would be if he knew the news. Thinking of this, Garp's teeth itched with hatred, and he wished he could punch Luffy on the head 2 more times. What a shameful thing for the Monkey D family, bah. Boy Bai, how do you think this matter should be handled? Instead, Garp left this problem to Bai Ye. Seeing this, Bai Ye responded simply, for the sake of your grandson, I will send him to Pushing City. Garp cursed secretly in his heart, could this guy Bai Ye be angry with me on purpose? There is no step for me to climb. I think it was me who brought you to Marine headquarters in the first place. Now that you have become a Marine general, will you turn against him so quickly? But Garp couldn't directly tell Byakuya to release Luffy, so he could only cough awkwardly, well. Luffy just went to sea, and the reward amount is not high, so he won't be imprisoned in Impel Down. Otherwise, he will be imprisoned on your ship, and you can teach him a lesson for me. Quote. After saying that, Garp hung up the phone without giving Bai Ye a chance to speak. After Bai Ye hung up the phone, he said helplessly, am I going to use the Iron Fist of Love on Luffy too? In the next few days, Byakuya finally saw one of Luffy's characteristics as a child of the world, his cheating recovery ability. Even with the damage Bai Ye caused to Luffy, even Pirate Supernova, who had a bounty of hundreds of millions on his head, might not be able to survive. And Luffy was able to get out of bed and move after just 2 days. 3 days later, he even shouted in front of Bai Ye that he wanted to eat barbecue. Of course Byakuya didn't spoil Luffy. Anyway, Lieutenant General Garp asked him to teach Luffy a lesson for him. Why are you so polite? When Luffy yelled for barbecue, Shiro Yoruichi punched Luffy's head into his stomach. This punch caused Luffy to be injured again and he stayed in bed for a few more days. Luffy finally figured it out. Grandpa's name was here in Byakuya, so he could only save his life and avoid being beaten. Now Luffy was completely honest in front of Byakuya. When they were about to arrive at Ski Island, Colonel Vaughn and Kirby were already waiting at the dock for the arrival of the White Knight. Kirby has pink hair, and his figure is very different from 2 years ago. His height has reached the waist of Colonel Vaughn, and he no longer looks like a little carrot 2 years ago. Colonel Vaughn, I will see General Bai Ye soon. I feel so excited now. Becoming a Marine general has been Kirby's dream since he was a child. For this dream, Kirby has been training very hard in the past 2 years. Just to one day become a Marine like Shiro Yoruichi. Now that his goal has been fulfilled, Kirby can't help but be excited. Vaughn looked at Kirby's excitement and smiled happily. At first, he recommended Bai Ye to join the Marine Elite Training Camp because he thought Bai Ye was not weak. After graduating from the Marine Elite Training Camp, you might be able to become a general-level officer. But he never imagined that in just 2 years, he would become a Marine general just like riding a rocket. This surprised Vaughn. You must know that when Bai Ye suddenly showed his considerable strength, Vaughn began to arrange for his soldiers to train in the same way as before. However, after half a year, little results were achieved, and the improvement in soldiers' strength was far less than that achieved by participating in normal training. Only Vaughn had to give up Bai Ye's training method. Now Bai Ye has become Marine General and returned to his hometown with honor. Let Vaughn think about that training method again. I thought about it, maybe it was because the soldiers didn't practice long enough. When Bai Ye comes back this time, he must let him guide the soldiers properly. Maybe another Marine General will appear from Sky Island. When he was about to disembark, Luffy walked out of the room with difficulty and shouted to Byakuya, I want to go to the island. No, Bai Ye refused coldly, as a captured pirate, you are not qualified to make demands. Nami was also very interested in the place where Bai Ye grew up. She took Bai Ye's arm and said coquettishly, I also want to go to the island to see where you lived. No problem, I'll let Colonel Vaughn take a look at you then. Bai Ye smiled and pinched Nami's creamy cheeks. It felt so good that Bai Ye would have wanted to play with it for a while if the occasion hadn't been inappropriate. When Luffy saw Byakuya agreeing to Nami's request so easily, he said angrily, why can Nami go and I can't? I want to go to the island too. It's time to clean up again, right? Byakuya clenched his fists and gestured towards Luffy. Luffy was so scared that he didn't dare to say anything anymore. Nami couldn't bear to see Luffy's pitiful appearance. After thinking for a while, she whispered in Bai Ye's ear, "If you let Luffy go to the island, I will agree to your request." After finishing speaking, Nami's cheeks turned a special pink color and she looked really cute. Real. Bai Ye looked at Nami's cherry-like little mouth and pouted slightly, and couldn't help but feel lustful. Nami nodded shyly. Byakuya was overjoyed and said to Luffy, who looked unhappy, "Since Nami has begged for you, let you go to the island. But when you go to the island, you need to abide by my rules." Quote. Luffy quickly promised, "As long as I can go to the island, I will definitely comply." So Bai Ye signaled to the soldiers beside him to cuff Luffy with sea-stone handcuffs. Considering Luffy's current strength, after coming into contact with the sea-stone handcuffs, his entire body instantly became limp and weak, and he couldn't even move a finger. Even talking is difficult. Bai Ye hugged Vaughn, and countless thoughts surged through her. Now 2 years have passed, and although Colonel Vaughn's body looks as strong as usual, traces of the passage of time can still be seen. Vaughn glanced at Nami and gave Bai Ye a thumbs up secretly, as if to say, "You are a good boy." After getting off the boat in the White Night, I looked at Colonel Vaughn at the dock and felt filled with emotion. Colonel Vaughn. When Bai Ye didn't activate the system, if it weren't for Colonel Vaughn, he would probably have died at the hands of the pirates. But how could a simple Luffy know that there is a difference in being beaten? Bai Ye suddenly felt sweaty. He only brought one Nami back. If he brought everyone else back. Vaughn patted Bai Ye's back and said with a smile, "You've become General Marine, why do you still call me Colonel Vaughn?" Bai Ye touched his head in embarrassment and said happily, "Hey, I've been calling you smoothly for so many years. It turns out to be the official third generation. Bring back such a good-looking girlfriend. Don't let Colonel Vaughn, who has been single for many years, be driven crazy." After docking the Jijiru at the dock, Byakuya and Nami stepped off the ship together, while the soldier pushed Luffy from behind. At this time, Luffy's little head was filled with doubts. Bai Ye reached out and touched Kebi's short, smooth pink hair. Kebi has grown up now. Bai Ye enjoyed this feeling of reunited with an old friend. At this time, Nami walked up to Kebi and asked, "Kebi, do you still recognize me? Some beatings are part of life, some beatings are part of love. This is the pirate I caught on the road." Vaughn understood instantly, and I said why not lock him up. Kebi on the side greeted Bai Ye extremely excitedly, "Brother Bai Ye. This guy's grandfather is Lieutenant General Garp." At this time, Vaughn noticed Luffy who was wrapped in bandages in his wheelchair, and asked Bai Ye, This is not fair. Why doesn't Nami, who is also a pirate like herself, need to wear sea-stone handcuffs and be beaten by Bai Ye?" Vaughn looked at Luffy with a hint of disgust in his eyes, and asked in confusion, "Shouldn't pirates be imprisoned?" The soldier put Luffy on a specially made wheelchair and prepared to push Luffy to the island. "In addition to my height, my strength has also grown by leaps and bounds." Quote. Kirby looked slightly satisfied and said, "Of course, in the past 2 years, I have been training according to Colonel Vaughn's requirements." Kebi looked at Nami's appearance, thought seriously for a moment, seemed to suddenly remember something, and said in surprise, "Are you the big sister from Orange Town?" Nami had a sweet smile on her face. "Yes, my name is Nami, you can call me Sister Nami from now on." Luffy kept turning his only moving eyes, revealing unspeakable grievances. From top to bottom, only the eyes can move. His figure became more stooped, the wrinkles on his face became much deeper, and a few silver hairs appeared in his short black hair.